To order. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the November 7th, 2024 Baltimore City Planning Commission meeting. My name is Sean Davis. I have the pleasure of chairing this commission for at least two more meetings. Sitting to my right is Stephanie Smith, Assistant Director of Planning and Secretary for the commission today. Ms. Secretary, will you call roll?
Is that the same? That's the person who's your promotion.
Latoya Curtis.
Okay.
Latoya Curtis.
No one else is going to.
Nope. Yep. Everybody else is good.
Jolene. Okay.
Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, now commence with the roll call. Commissioner Allen.
Present.
Commissioner Collins.
Curtis.
Or rather Curtis, I apologize. Commissioner Curtis.
Present.
Commissioner Costello, absent. Commissioner Horn.
Present.
Commissioner Jolin.
Present.
Commissioner McCoach.
Present.
Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Vice Chair Stevenson.
Present.
And Mr. Chair.
Present.
Thank you.
So we have before us our meeting minutes from October 10th, 2024, the longest meeting minutes in the history of my 7-year tenure on this planning commission. I am really glad I missed that meeting. So does anybody have any questions or comments regarding those minutes?
I have a couple corrections, Mr. Chair.
Great.
Well, on the item number 18, part 2 and 3, I believe I voted against the third part for the sign pole, the freestanding pole sign.
Okay.
And I think Commissioner Jolin did as well. That's only of, well, I mean, that's especially of note because, well, you do have in the note disapproval. So I just want to make sure that that was recommended accurately.
Actually, also. So the motion is for disapproval. I voted for the disapproval. I don't have it in front of me.
I see.
It is?
Okay.
Great.
That's right.
So do the minutes need to be corrected? Or do they
Well,
stand as
It
written?
sounds like now the correction is that because it's got 5 all voting the same way, I think 4 of us voted one way and the deputy mayor voted another.
Okay.
So there's a correction either way.
All right.
Motion to approve with corrections?
Do I have a second? Thank you, Vice Chair Stevenson and Commissioner Jolin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I abstain as I was not here. Okay, we have, okay, thank you, Commissioner Horn. We have consent agenda, CIP transfers. We have 2 old CIP transfers that we need to approve. One is from June 22nd. There was one item. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding that? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I do have a question, Mr. Chair. So the previous items from June 26th and July 10th are back on the agenda. Is there any additional explanation or?
I was under the impression that the explanation had been given.
Is that correct?
Ms. Ahern, it's good to see you.
Hi, good to see you all too. We have had some conversations about them, I believe, and talked about revising the transfer process, which we agreed we need to do. And we, I believe, had DPW in, particularly for subsequent transfers of a very similar nature. And wanted to go back and revisit these, which had the same justification for those that we had subsequently approved, kind of with the background that you now have on why costs are increasing.
Understood. And we did get the explanation last time. It's just that these weren't on the agenda. So this is like a catch up.
Yep. This is what we got to do for both of those. So with that, are there any additional questions or comments? We have a motion for the June 26th item.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Williams. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions? Next, we have July 10th. We have one item as well. This is a catch-up as well. Are there any questions regarding this? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Warren. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions? Next, we have the October 16th, 2024. There were two items on this CIP transfer, this Board of Estimates meeting. Do we have any questions or comments regarding them? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Finally, we have the November 6th CIP transfer to the Board of Estimates. In total, there were, I believe, 8. I'm just checking that. Yes, 8 items. Any questions or comments regarding these?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Item number 2 from Housing and Community Development is I'm sorry,
The $1 million. Is that the $1 million?
yes. And I just note that there's an account labeled as unallocated reserve. I'd like to reiterate my request to see balances of unallocated reserve accounts.
I think Ms. Ahern has heard you loud and clear.
That's all. Thank you.
Well, Kristen, you were about to get it. If you could, real quickly on item number 8, the total transfer amount was for 1.245 million. The total transfer 2 is in the account of 1,063,000. What happened to the other 180,000?
So the contract amount is $1,063,627. Typically, agencies do need to build in an additional amount for items like advertising the contract and inspections and other potential overhead.
So the entire transfer is going to project 003070.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments regarding that? Any other questions or comments regarding that? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevenson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. I think I heard Robin's voice. Okay, great. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, we have City Council Bill 24-0597, city property renaming of the Riverside Park Pool to the Congressman Elisha E. Cummings Community Pool in the 11th District. We have letters of support that have been provided by both the Department of Recreation and Parks as well as the Riverside Community Association. Are there any questions or comments regarding this item? I wish we could have more ceremonial because it seems like it is a very important thing, but
Today, we could have had it at the pool.
we could have. We could have. Good point. So with that, you threw me off there, Vice Chair Stevenson. With that, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stevenson. Do we have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Jolan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Before I continue on a consent agenda, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this. If anyone here is here for agenda item number 9, which is the minor change in final design approval to the new East Baltimore Community PUD number 129 at 1913 through 1917 Ashland Avenue and 1928 Madison Street. That item has been postponed until December 5th. I think there's people who are working on pulling together some plans for that. So if you are here for that, we're not going to be focusing on that or hearing anything on that today. It'll be on December 5th. Forgive me for not saying that before we started the consent agenda. Next on the consent agenda, we have item number 5 is minor subdivision final plans, 2900 West Strathmore Avenue in the 5th District. Any questions or comments on this? Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevenson, Vice Chair Stevenson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Number 6, minor subdivision plans, 700 West Patapsco Avenue in the 10th District. Questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoach. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Horn. I'm sure we're going to get Commissioner Curtis engaged in these discussions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Finally, on the consent agenda, minor subdivision plans for 2323 Orleans Street in the 13th District. Questions or comments? Do we have a motion? Thank you, Commissioner Jolin. Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Curtis. She's on the board.
right.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to our regular agenda item, I turn it over to you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. For the next regular agenda item is adoption Medfield Heights Elementary School Inspire Plan in the 7th District.
And who do we have presenting?
Yeah.
There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yafa Weiss,
I'm Marie McSweeney Anderson.
and we're here to present the Medfield Heights Inspire Plan for full adoption by the Planning Commission. Just a brief overview, we're going to provide a brief introduction about the Inspire program and some of the work we did with Medfield, moving into just a longer discussion about
If you can pull the mic towards you, or I just want to make sure that you're being
that
recorded.
better? Is that?
And the lay, because I got a fan behind me, which can't be loud.
No worries, thank you.
Blowing any harder, I hope. Thank you.
We'll move into a discussion about our planning process and the development of this plan, and a review of some of our more prominent plan recommendations, concluding with our next steps with this planning document.
Yeah, and Ms. Curtis, just for context, I'm the Northern District Planner. And then Yafa is the Inspire Planner. So I'm the area planner and she's the
Ms. McSweeney Anderson, I know you can speak.
She's the specialized planner.
Thank you.
So Medfield Heights Elementary School is located in northern Baltimore, within the Medfield community along Buchanan Avenue. This is an area just north of the prominent Hamden community. The Inspire planning process for Medfield launched in June of 2019 due to the pandemic and departmental priorities needing to be refocused elsewhere. The Inspire plan was by and large put on hold until DOP renewed engagement with the community in 2023. Our participation came primarily from the Medfield Community Association, some of the surrounding neighborhood community associations, and the school community. And
Just in case you didn't see our faces before.
INSPIRE is an acronym for Investing in Neighborhoods and Schools to Promote Improvement, Revitalization, and Excellence. Just a quick overview of the program. The INSPIRE program focuses on leveraging the new work created by the 21st Century School Building Program to provide community and infrastructure development to school communities, focusing on the quarter to half mile area surrounding the new school buildings. The scope of the INSPIRE plan includes sort of a three-pronged approach. The first is the designation and investment in primary walking routes to connect the school to nearby housing and assets. The second is the area-specific recommendations report, which is the core component of the plan we are putting forth today to Planning Commission. And the third is a community project of an investment of about $100,000 into one of the action items specified in the recommendation report. And we will discuss this in greater detail later in the presentation.
And so as the area planner, I'll talk a little bit about Medfield. So for folks who are unfamiliar with the area, it's right off of 83. Some of the major streets that it's bordered are Cold Spring Lane, Falls Road, and 41st Street. There are lots of amenities in Medfield, but I really just want to bring your attention to the median household income, which is both higher than the Baltimore City average and the Baltimore metro region. So this really affected some of the recommendations that you'll see in this Inspire report. I think in a lot of Inspire reports, we see a lot of focus on housing, focus on vacancy. So some of the issues that are outlined here aren't typical for our usual Inspire plans. Just want to recognize some of the amenities. There is community gathering space and history in the area, particularly around World War II. There's great access to transportation, not only via 83, but also the light rail station on Cold Spring Lane. There is a recreation center. It's adjacent to the school and 7 acres of green space as well as a basketball court.
At this point, we'd like to dive a little bit into our planning process for this Inspire plan. Prior to 2022, these were the streetways that were designated by the community as primary walking routes and received DOT work for improvement of ADA access, planting of street trees, and clearing of litter. These routes primarily connect students to the Medfield community, the Medfield Recreation Center as a primary community asset, as well as neighboring residential opportunities. Oh, good. This is a little the formatting is a little off. We apologize. But work persisted on this plan from the mid of 2019 through 2023. Our final interaction with the community was this past October for one final review of the draft plan we put before you. At this point, we're going to discuss some of the more prominent recommendation items. So the recommendation report for this Inspire plan is broken down into 5 broad categories, focusing on housing, transportation through connectivity and access, opportunities for health and well-being, improving public safety, and establishing an environmentally sustainable neighborhood.
So there are 10 strategies that are outlined, and underneath those, there are 10 action items and recommendations. And we just wanted to note that all of the folks who are identified as leads on the action items have reviewed the plan, and that includes our partner agencies. So one of the first recommendations that is actually really unique to Medfield, one of the community assets is the Union Collective site. And so out of necessity, the community has created a walking path in the wooded area between Medfield and Union Collective. They would like to formalize this walking path. And the reason being is because if you've ever walked on 41st Street or biked on 41st Street, it is essentially a speedway coming from TV Hill up to Falls Road. There is no sidewalk connecting Medfield to the Union Collective site. And so you would have to kind of walk out and around. There will still be focus to make sure that there's ADA accessibility to the Union Collective site. But this is kind of a fun, creative project that neighbors would like to work on together to establish kind of a trail network down to Union Collective.
It'd be a little crooked road though, right? No, I know.
It's kind of
They're coming
nice.
back from Union anyway.
We did a little.
We did it
A
for
little
inclusive
line.
video
Throw me a
footage as
bone
well.
here.
But the community expressed specific interest in this walking path as an opportunity also for the community to be involved in fundraising and beautification.
So
Oh, sorry.
I'll wait till the end.
Okay.
One of the core recommendations that we put forth in most of our Inspire plans is to focus on street lighting. Medfield, in addition to having a number of bulbs that were out through a review by Department of Transportation, they were able to map out and include Medfield in future plans for upgrading streetlights to LED to burn brighter and longer. In regards to public safety, and again, one of the more interesting things that came about through conversations with the community is their interest in ancillary harm reduction services to support 911 emergency services. This particularly became prominent in wanting to learn more about overdose prevention and naloxone administration, as well as community-centered mediation and conflict management. Two prominent partners in Baltimore City, the Harm Reduction Coalition and the Baltimore Community Mediation Center, serve as teaching annexes for skill development. Department of Planning is interested in midwifing's work with the community association and being able to connect them further to these services for training and certification.
Yeah, both are interested in partnering. So another kind of like issue area is Cold Spring Lane and Falls Road. On either which way, there's up to 6 lanes of traffic. And with the knowledge that Poly and Western.
Whoa.
See myself out. I'll just see myself.
Just alone, thank you.
I'm sorry, we're a city family, but Poly Western is undergoing renovations and Medfield Heights was just reconstructed. There's some impetus there to really take a look at these intersections in particular. And so we've already begun conversations with our colleagues at DOT. They're currently working at Northern Parkway and Falls, but attention, once that work is complete, we'll shift down to Cold Spring and Falls. So that's in the queue right now.
As for next steps, we are going to be, upon adoption of this plan, be featuring this on our department website for public consumption. Starting in 2025, we are also, Marie and I are also going to be working in tandem with the Greater Hamden community around focusing on the Robert Poole building to start doing some more combined work in terms of implementation of both of these Inspire plans, again, upon adoption by the Planning Commission.
Yeah, and for context, the Robert Poole plan is the half-mile south of 41st Street, and then Medfield takes a look at the half-mile north. So we just want to make sure that we're working in concert and moving as many projects forward as we can.
And finally, we would like to approach the council with a recommendation for full adoption of the Medfield Heights Inspire plan. We thank you for your time this morning and this afternoon.
Questions?
And we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McCoach, any questions for Jeff?
No, I thought it's another really good Inspire plan that adds small scale improvements to the neighborhood that have big benefits.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Horn.
Great plan. Just a quick question about the recreational center. Understand that was a key part of the community engagement and plan in terms of continuing to get funding for the renovation of it. Can you give us the sort of the status? I know they're phasing it and they've done some, but I know there's more to come. I just didn't know that's something that we should key on during this upcoming capital budget in terms of.
Yes, my understanding through conversations with Rec and Parks is that phase 2 should be has a wish list that's to be created, but is not set for full implementation yet. They did Rec and Parks did indicate that if the community is interested in additional work, other beautification work, planter boxes, sort of ancillary to the core work that is being put in for full renovation, Rec and Parks is also willing to work with the community to make a vision happen. So in the queue, but with nothing set yet. As far as we know.
I think it was April when the gaming center was opened. So that was the first phase. So Commissioner, I think that that's a good idea to keep in mind for this upcoming CIP process.
Commissioner Jolin.
It's wonderful. No questions. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
No questions. Thanks for all the work on this.
Vice Chair Stevenson.
Wonderful plan. Could you briefly just talk a little bit about the neighborhood liaison program?
Yeah, so this was an idea that came out of a few recommendations where folks had lots of ideas, but there needed to be greater communication and collaboration. So there's a few different buckets. One is Medfield's going to be split into 3 council districts this upcoming season. So that's a lot to keep track of. That's a lot of folks who are, council people track projects happening in their own council districts, but not happening in other council districts. So that's going to be really important for Medfield Community Association to take on and have liaisons to each of the council offices. There's also a fast and growing population of immigrants in the Medfield community. So there's a population of Hispanic immigrants as well as Nepali immigrants. And so the school has done a really great job of making resources available in different languages for families. However, there's greater opportunity for integration into community-based decision-making. And then I think that there was one more group. I can't remember off the top of my head.
At schools?
Oh, the schools. Yeah. So there's a great relationship with Medfield Heights Elementary. But seeing as Poly Western is right across the street and the decisions at both of the schools really affect the community. Lots of high school students from Medfield attend Poly or Western. So there is just the opportunity there to build a deeper relationship. So the liaison program would essentially have a resident from Medfield who's responsible for communicating regularly with each of these kind of different subsections and then reporting back and or inviting folks and creating leadership development to attend the Medfield meetings.
Great.
Commissioner Curtis.
Thank you. Nice plan. I do have a question. You mentioned the green space. Are there any plans for what's going to be done with the green space?
So that was one of the there were so many ideas for the green space, right? Yoga and new sports fields. So one of our recommendations was y'all need to form a group, right? A friends of group to really think through what does the master planning for this green space look like? And that's really worked well in other communities so that there's not just us giving recommendations from one time, but both a group that's looking at long-term strategy, funding, as well as, direction of what's happening.
Thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
No questions. I appreciate the work that went into your presentation.
Thank you.
So it's a very well-written report. I mean, I like the context of it, the way it's written. It's really concise, very well done. Recommendations are very, very achievable, which is great. There's nothing that's crazy out there that you're going to be going, okay, that's going to hang things up. I think they're all very, very reasonable. So great job. I think the only thing that came up because of your presentation is the connection down to Union is that privately owned property?
Yeah, so that property is owned by the folks who own Union Collective, and there's already a good relationship between the community and that site.
So they can figure out a way to get it done legally and make everybody happy.
Yeah, we reached out to DOT and they were like, we have no purview over this, so have fun.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
I was also curious, and there's a paper street that goes down. I'm not sure how the topography works.
Did Medfield Ave used to go through?
Paper street,
That's what it
so,
looks like.
yeah, so there's a right of way that could be.
There you go. There's your access.
So, no,
Use the
how
paper
steep it
street.
Say, Deputy Mayor Williams said, you have to help.
Feels paying off.
No, because he's going to say, Miss
No, money for
Sweeney Anderson
Yeah.
did he?
Point it out.
We would also just like to say thank you to Eli Poussin, who helped develop the final plan. We would like just to say thank you to Eli Poussin at this point, who helped us assemble the document itself and provided additional support. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, who are you talking about? I missed-
Eli Poussin.
Oh, okay.
Raise your hand.
Come on, stand up. Oh, there, okay, thank you. All right, great. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this agenda item? If so, please come on up.
I don't think we have anyone here, but we do have a letter of support.
Yes. Yep, saw that. It's in the file. Okay, great. With that, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, deliberations from the commission? Hearing none, do I have a resounding motion for adoption as is highlighted on this slide?
Motion to approve.
Well, there you go.
Second.
All right, great. Madam Secretary, will you call roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Allen?
Approved.
Commissioner Curtis?
Approved.
Commissioner Horn?
Approved.
Commissioner Jolin?
Approved.
Commissioner McCoach?
Approved.
Commissioner Williams?
Approved.
Vice Chair?
Approved.
Mr. Chair?
Approve. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item 9, as we mentioned previously, has been postponed, so we are now on to agenda item number 10. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. City Council Bill 24-0587, zoning, conditional use conversion of a single-family dwelling unit to 4 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district. Variances 1817 North Broadway in the 12th district.
And who is here to present to us?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Walker, and I will be presenting, as mentioned, on 24-0587. I'm involved in the...
New member of the staff.
Yes, I am a new member of the staff. This is my first time.
So I was going to say, I don't think I've seen you guys.
This guy.
Welcome. You know, let's walk into this a little bit. Okay. Nice to see ya. All right.
By way of introduction, the land use and urban design team is full strength for the first time in about 7 years.
Fantastic.
Had 3, one new hire, 1 returning member that you saw last time. Justin is the third part of the trifecta, taking Martin French's former position as our liaison to the zoning board, among other things.
I'm sorry for that, but welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you. There's no rush, even though it's like 97 degrees.
Oh, yeah. We all see that pool you were talking about.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you. So as mentioned, this is involving a conditional use conversion of a single-family dwelling row home into 4 dwelling units in an R8 zoning district, as I just mentioned. And it will also be requiring a few variances. So just take a look at the property, which was more there we go. It's now more obviously highlighted in yellow on your screen here. So this is in the Broadway East neighborhood between Lafayette Avenue and East North Avenue. And then you can see with the red dot, a shot from straight above the property. There's a head-on look. As you can see, it's a row house with some demolitions that have occurred along the row. And there's an aerial from the backside of the property looking west. So the convergence standards, as you all know, are up on the screen. I won't read through these, but they are for reference for any members of the public who may need them. And second portion here. So as mentioned, this conversion does require a few variances. So the first of those is the lot area variance. So in this zoning district, 750 square feet of lot area is needed per dwelling unit. And I do apologize for that typo. That should be for 4 dwelling units on that first bullet there. So a total requirement of 2,625 square feet is needed. The lot currently encloses 1,253 square feet, so a variance of 52% is needed for the lot area. The second variance will be the off-street parking requirement. In the zoning district, multifamily is required a 1 parking spot per dwelling unit ratio. So the 2 additional dwelling units would require 2 additional spaces, and none are proposed to be provided. So a 100% variance would be needed for the parking. The existing dwelling does meet the conversion requirement of 1,500 square feet, as the structure has about 2,400 gross floor area. And the final variance needed from the conversion standards is the minimum per dwelling unit. So the proposal is for 4 one-bedroom units, and conversion standards have the minimum floor area for a 1-bedroom unit at 750 square feet. So one of the units proposed is 900 square feet, which meets the requirement. 2 are proposed for 600 square feet, which would require a 20% variance. And 1 unit is proposed for 300 square feet, needing a 60% variance. And because of the significance of these variances, many of them over 50%, we do recommend disapproval of this conversion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Justin? Commissioner Allen?
No questions right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Curtis?
No questions.
Vice Chair Stevenson?
Were any floor plans submitted with the application to help us understand how they intend to fit the dwelling units in the limited space?
We did not receive any floor plans with those specifications.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
So to that point, like, how'd you come up with the floor area per unit number?
So that was given in a document, but the
Plan.
drawings of the floor plan were not there. And I will just mention it did receive a letter of approval from Councilman Stokes, or a letter of support, sorry.
And yeah, that's my second question. I saw in the applicant's justification letter, there was reference to the community association.
Yes.
Or Dr. Minor Terrell, I'm not sure what her role, I know she's a community stakeholder. Did she submit a letter officially or did any other group? So no.
No.
Thank
You
you.
do not have a copy of that letter? It was referenced?
I referenced, well, the letter from Councilman Stokes is separate. I
Yes,
guess
we have that letter.
Yeah, but I guess that's my other community.
Okay.
So sounds like there's
Yeah.
none.
There's
All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dolan.
In reading the justification letter, understood the reasoning behind this. Is there a reason why we're going for 4 versus a 3? I think 3 would be a lot more digestible in this situation.
I am not sure why the applicant chose to do that.
Well, what do you think about 3?
So 3 would require a smaller variance, of course, of about 32%, which would get closer to, the required floor area and not create a 300 square foot unit, but
Put in the spot or you can punt to others with planning staff support, 3 units.
Yeah, I think I can step in here. So for 3 units, I would put it closer to the range where we're more comfortable stretching. I mean, we recognize this is a fairly substantial building on the property. So we want to see it put back to productive use and get it back occupied. But, 4 units is just a bit too far for us. So 3 would be much more comfortable. Now, again, because we don't have floor plans and the applicant can speak to that, I'm not sure what the interior may be like and how feasible that might be. But as a middle ground, I'm sure that would be preferable for him than for a straight disapproval from the commission.
In terms of variances, there's 3 variances required. Is that right?
yes.
Lot area,
Lot area,
parking,
and
and
the conversion per the unit size.
so going to 3 units would reduce the lot area variance, it would reduce the parking area variance, and it would potentially eliminate the floor area.
Potentially,
variance.
depending on how the
Or
3
get it much closer.
arrange.
Anything else? Commissioner Dolan? Commissioner Horn?
No questions.
Commissioner McCoach?
Yeah, I have a question about the 300 square foot. So hard. The 300 square foot unit, we regularly approve new construction with studio apartments. I'm wondering, do we have, in terms of our dwelling standards, any standard for a unit with not a defined bedroom, but more of a studio configuration?
So when we were overhauling the zoning code to get to the current zoning code that went into effect in 2017, we eliminated efficiency units from the old zoning code. Efficiency units, by definition, were in some cases one wall different from a small dwelling unit, but it required less of a lot area requirement. And so in a lot of cases, you could get one extra efficiency unit by way of conversion where a full dwelling unit would not fit by lot area. And literally is you add one wall and it's now a 1 DU instead of an efficiency unit. So we saw that getting abused a little bit and we pulled that back.
Right.
But in looking at the conversion process, we made it a bit more detailed because we had cases of a tiny building on a really big parcel, or the reverse where you had a 4-story wall to wall, no yard, big building on a small lot relatively, and they would be treated the same, even though practically one may be more attractive than the other. Hence the requirement for the minimum unit sizes to try and make sure that there would be something reasonably livable. And going all the way back into the late 90s, I believe it was 1998 or 99, a year or two before I joined the department, that's when the first time the conditional use conversions became a thing. Prior to that, if you had the lot area, if you could provide the parking, you can get a permit over the counter for a multifamily dwelling. It's allowed. Also, you could knock that building down and build a new building in its place, as you've heard Councilman Dorsey talk about, stick for stick, and it would be allowable provided you got the variances for it, but it would not require the conditional use. So that's what's in the code now, just to try and get at approximate unit sizes. That's not always feasible for retrofits. So we're open to conversation if that's not a good way to get at it, but that's where we are for now.
Okay, well, I can see in a city that has a housing affordability problem, there's obvious justification for variances. This seems extreme. I too wondered about 3 units because I'm just not sure how much income a 300 square foot unit out of the entire building is actually going to generate. So, thank you.
Commissioner Horn, you got a follow-up question?
Yeah, and this has no bearing on what I'm looking at, but in that area, do you have a understanding of the vacancy rate?
I don't have the exact numbers. Of course, you saw the aerial view of, there've been some demolitions in the area, but I don't have the vacancy rate of the neighborhood.
Deputy Secretary Smith is saying that's one of the highest vacancy rates in the city.
So to me, one of the highest areas of vacancy rates in the city, I think that's an area where we are looking to bring in population. So I think a win-win or some way to kind of figure it out to provide incentive for developers to invest in the area.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak? You have been chomping at the bit. Come on up. I would assume you're Mr. Womack?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Come on up, introduce yourself. And
Hello, Commissioners. Good afternoon. I'm A-Rod Womack, and I'm the owner of the property. First, let me just state for the record, I had no idea that the planning department would need floor plans because I would have easily provided that for them. I'm not sure where they're getting the numbers for the units. I will say that the more efficiency type unit is about 300 square feet. That's right. But the larger unit on the 3rd floor takes up the entire length of the floor, and it's every bit of that. That unit's every bit of maybe 700 square feet, 650, 700 square feet. There are 2 other units that are about 600 square foot each, and they have a very large kitchen, a very large bathroom, and a very large bedroom. When I say a large bedroom, one of the bedrooms is like 240 square feet just in the bedroom, and the kitchen's over 200 square feet. So these are very nice size units, and they're very comfortable. They're compatible to other units where folks have multifamily in the area. No, there's not parking, but nowhere that I know of on that side of the corridor of Broadway has off-street parking. Everything around Broadway there in the 18, 17, 1600 block is mostly on-street parking, and that goes from the single-family homes to the multifamily homes that are along that corridor. So I am a little, I guess, taken back by the disapproval, but I understand why, based on the information you had. What I will say is that these are very large, because I'm also I'm a partner in a development on Park Avenue. So 400 Park Avenue, which may have come across your plate at some point, is 99 units, 5 townhomes and 94 new residential units on the corner of Park and Franklin. And our units, some of our units are considerably smaller than what we have already in this building. So that's what I wanted to share with the body, and would say to you that there's a huge need for more affordable housing, not only there, but throughout the city. I think that we're doing that. We have price points that we're looking at between, for the smallest unit,
Well, the problem is, you're getting these scrubs, and everybody's just.
Okay, that makes sense. When
I played rugby one game.
I was like scared watching it. I'm like, people are just running out. There's nothing on. It's just like, feels like caveman type. Like, there's nothing.
I'd be at football practice.
Just grappling.
Across the way to be the.
I'm a pretty tough gal, but I'm like, whoa, this is extreme.
You know, our daughter's first husband was a rugby player at West Point, and we watched him.
I got you. Thank you. I
And he got
appreciate
off the
that.
field, and I mean, he was bleeding from every orifice in his body. And it was just like,
So brutal.
oh yeah, it's like going, you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm great. Bye.
If I had a normal day, just another day.
Already did.
Because you did football, right? That's what I thought. Okay. That's what I thought.
Much practice. Rugby guys go past and then.
Yeah.
Rhode Island weather and they're like.
It's like, are you being hazed?
It's all about the drink.
Volunteered for that? Like,
Especially, yeah, we're Division 2. We're not even like
a club, it's like a club or something. You're doing it for the love of the game, as they say.
I played one game and I was in the scrum and I had my hands like this and somebody came in running and it's hot. Okay.
They were hitting your head?
Somebody came running and they put their head down and they hit their head hit my hand and I heard every bone in my hand pop, every knuckle pop.
Mine.
I said, this is gonna screw up my golf game. I'm done.
You're like,
Literally, I was like, I'm never walking.
you're like, I need this for the rest of my life so I can enjoy these golf games.
All right, so we've got our microphones back.
That's a good sign.
So, I'm sorry,
Is it recording?
is it recording? Do we know? Okay,
It's here.
and there we go. All right, so we're back up, Mr. Womack. So let's continue.
Oh, well, just in continuation, I was just saying that I do believe this does fill a small gap for very much needed affordable housing in that area. But I also need to recognize the fact that, we have a planning commission in place and rules around, at least processes around how this gets constructed for a reason. And I want to make sure that I am doing my part in making sure that we are fulfilling that our role as property owners, as developers, as builders in that process. And so I'm open to this being 3 units if that makes this more feasible, to move it through the process. That's pretty much it on my part. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Don't walk away, just real quickly. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Womack? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
The standards for granting a variance. Actually, I'm forgetting it all. Wow, I've lost my. Yeah, well, I need to have demonstrate a hardship that's tied to the actual provision. So can you talk through the variance standard? So you need a variance, especially for I think the one that causes most heartburn for me and others would probably be the dwelling unit size and the reason you need 4, because you only have so many square feet of lot area. Can you go back to that one?
I just have the conditional use up here.
Oh, but I mean, that's fine. But I guess, yeah, I mean, that's standard. So I guess, can you talk through why?
Coming from the former land use lawyer.
I would say first, it's that area most important, this was some point I kind of just it's from a construction situated units very like I said they had really good size for one one-bedroom. They were really nice size one-bedroom units. And so I didn't do anything to change that. That's kind of the way to So answer that.
All right, turn your mic like.
Yes.
All right, let's see who's like. It's every mic. All right, so. Okay. When you bought the building, was it already divided into units? Okay, so you're renovating an existing.
Really
Okay. And it currently has 4 units. And you're just, and the reason why the multifamily register has been vacant a year, and therefore it's registered. And everybody can period. Well, I mean, before you bought it, if it was in, if it's vacant.
Community folks are the ones that say, look, we want, I asked around before I even bought it. I talked to various folks in the community, all right, please do something with it. We want something done. But again, I just want to be clear, I'm open. Okay, I'm open.
That's a big difference.
Yes.
I mean, to recognize that you purchase this and it's currently 4 units and you're basically, you want to do light rehab or light renovations to it. That's great.
Okay.
Now, if you could turn your mic back on.
Yes.
I think we'll all be in accords.
Okay.
All right. You recognize that this commission is strictly a recommending body.
Yes, I
This
do.
is the city council.
Yes.
Bill, we will deliberate, we will make a recommendation to
Okay.
the city council. It is ultimately up to the city council to do, as they see fit with this. Take our recommendation, modify our recommendation, disregard our recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you again so much.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing that, I close the public hearing. Comments, questions, deliberations, discussions amongst the commission? If not, do I have a motion?
I would, motion to recommend 3 units.
Okay. We have a motion. And when you say it's a motion to recommend 3 units with all the accompanying variances necessary for the 3 units?
Correct.
Including lot size, parking, and unit size as necessary?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion. So stated, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to say that you guys hit it at the exact same time, so I'm putting both y'all down. We have a motion that's been seconded. Madam Secretary, will you call roll?
Commissioner Allen,
Approve as amended.
Commissioner Curtis,
Approve as amended.
Commissioner Horn,
Proof as amended.
Commissioner Jolin,
Approve.
Commissioner McCoach,
Approve as amended.
Commissioner Williams.
Approve as amended. I will note that, don't see permits for any prior conversion. Like I see the last use occupancy permit was for a single family dwelling. So for that reason, I support 3 units. Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Approve.
Mr. Chair.
Approve. Right, so this will now go back to the city council with our recommendation. So speak with your councilman, I think Councilman Stokes, if I'm not mistaken, and he will have our recommendation and they will move forward. Thank you very much for your time. All right, next.
Regular agenda item number 11, City Council Bill 24-0598, rezoning 1223-1229 Argyle Avenue, 11th District. He's still not here.
Mr. Bolden,
Yes.
how are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Introduce yourself to the other members who may not.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tariq Bolden. I am the Western District Planner. Just waiting on. Yes. Oh, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Tariq Bolden. I am the Western District Planner. I am presenting on Council Bill 240598 for 1223 to 1229 Argyle Avenue. The request is for rezoning for the purpose of changing the zoning for 1223 to 1229 Argyle Avenue from R8 zoning district to the I1 zoning district. I am the staff involved. And this petitioner is with the Upton Planning Committee, care of Wanda Beth. It's not here, yeah. This is the map of the site. It's unfortunately right behind the elementary school, the Furman Elementary School. It is the block. It is located on Argyle Avenue between Landville Street and Dolphin Street. The thing to note, this map is a little bit outdated. The properties across the street were demolished in 2021. The properties along the entire block, actually on both sides, except for next to the site in question, were demolished in 2021, and a farm was started in early 2022. In 2022, the Upton Planning Committee, in collaboration with MICA, created the Natural Dye Initiative, which is and I want to get this correct, which is a collaborative dedicated to the development of natural dye ecosystems. Basically, they currently grow indigo plants on the farm and the green space directly across from the site. And they use the leaves from this to create natural dye that they actually turn into blue hue that they actually go out and use for various products that they sell out into the community. Someone here will speak to it a little bit better than I can. Right now, currently, the dye is processed at the farm, and there's some overhead shots. This is from the north, the area directly across the street from the site. The site is the building with the red dot. You can see some of the indigo farm outlined directly in front of it. This is the site as it is today. Currently, the indigo is being done outside on the farm in smaller quantities. The objective of this project would be to look at this site as a potential for potentially doing light manufacturing and doing that here. This is currently the Beecher Stowe School. It's been vacant for some time. It's been boarded up and reboarded multiple times to keep people from entering it. It is currently owned by the Upton Planning Committee. The Harriet Beecher Stowe School and Fields is located along the 1200 block of Argyle Avenue. The farm was started in 2022. It's been very successful. It's been working with both the community people and the Upton Planning Committee to turn this green space into something very profitable and conductive for the community. The Natural Dye Initiative, working with a neighborhood group known as Sacred Colors, is working together to not only work and create the dye, but also train the community as an economic development tool, as an opportunity to create employment for the community, and as an opportunity to really do something here. In the picture below, they have some ideas for what can be done with this site and some of the things that can be created at this location in conjunction with the local farm. The current zoning map, the property itself lies in an R8 district. Primarily around residential and all the areas around it. The site itself is located in the middle next to the Furman, I always get the last name right, Templeton School. Really just not much changing in comparison to what is there and what is proposed. Based on the analysis of the standards for a rezoning of this size, we're looking at the fact that the majority of the properties on the 1200 and 1300 block of Argyle Avenue are now vacant green space. A lot of the land has been repurposed from vacant green space on both this block and the block on either side into potential urban agriculture. The operators of the Harriet Beecher Stowe Fields are working with DHCD to expand that to not only look at the 1200 block, but also look at the 1300 block and potentially the 1100 block, and actually repurpose all of that land into potential urban agriculture and expanding this indigo farm and this indigo project. Part of that would be looking at the Harriet Beecher Stowe School and looking at it as saying that this neighborhood and the character of this corridor has changed into an urban agricultural state, and that there's an opportunity here for this particular property to help contribute to that by being used as light manufacturing to allow for the processing of these indigo plants into the natural dye on site and create an opportunity for not only economic development for the neighborhood, but also employment for the corridor. And the Department of Planning is recommending approval of this proposed rezoning into IMU 1. for the purposes of the fact that this is actually something where it's really recognizing that this corridor has changed, the character of this area has changed, and this project would support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bolden. Are there questions for Tariq? Councilman McCoach, Commissioner McCoach. I just elevated you to councilman.
No, I think normally when we start to create pockets of industrial zoning within residential communities, one wonders if that's appropriate for the immediate and the long term. But I think that the city is cultivating a lot of makerspace type of operations, which are essentially community-oriented sort of employment centers. And so in that regard, I love this idea, and I think it's a great adaptive reuse of that building. So I have no questions.
Commissioner Warren.
I echo that. I love the idea. Talked to Sherry Parks way back when that whole neighborhood was trying to think about this, and really love the progress. So job well done to get the project this far.
Commissioner Joel.
No questions, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
Yeah, given what you said about the future expansion, is there a reason we're not proposing to rezone more?
Currently, right now, under the R8 zoning, you can do urban agriculture with you have to go to the BMZ for conditional use. So there is a discussion with the urban planning, with the urban planning, Upton Planning Committee about doing that in the near future. But right now, it's all DHCD land, so it's just a combination of having that conversation.
I just want to make sure that it's clear for the commission because the last slide doesn't show it. We're actually recommending an alternate designation to IMU1 instead of I1 as introduced. I just want to make sure that that was
We were going to get there.
obvious to you.
That was going to be my question, if you could elaborate on the change from I1 to IMU1 and whether or not any other designations such as commercial were considered and why they don't fit.
Well, with I1, that actually opens up to a lot of uses that potentially are not desirable there. And also within IMU1, it is a residential district. We wanted to make sure that as we introduce this use, it also is a more of a seamless transition from a residential to a mixed use because it does have more potential. There's also a property next to it that could potentially be developed. So we want to make sure that it's not just stark as an I1, which who knows down the line, as Commissioner McCoach said, you want to make sure that long term that this fits. So with an IMU, it's a much better, we felt, transition than with an I1, which can have some pretty nasty uses.
Anything further, Vice Chair Stevenson?
Nope.
Commissioner Curtis.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
No questions. Very good presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to be a bit of a jerk, unfortunately. I love the use. I love the idea. But what I'm concerned about is things go great and in 5 years things change and this use goes out. And now you've got this zone of IMU1 in the heart of an R8 community that can be used for a variety of things that currently aren't contemplated. You said that urban agriculture is permitted use or is a conditional use.
Conditional use.
Is there anything associated with urban agriculture in terms of processing that urban ag that is part of that conditional use?
That would allow for it?
No, it's urban ag includes like farm stands and the ability to sell crop. It's the processing part that they need, which is an industrial category. So that's why we're shifting to IMU1 to get the least impactful district option that provides the processing part, also allowing for sales of that product.
I'm sure that though, if they allow sales as part of the urban ag.
Well, yes, of the raw product itself. So if they were to sell the plants, like if you're growing vegetables, no problem. It's the processing piece that really causes the problem. And IMU is also a district that is intended for reuse of buildings that no longer fit a particular need, which we think this one kept. So we're trying to walk the knife edge of giving them enough without too much. And so that's where we landed at IMU1.
Does any other residential district, like an R10 district, allow urban agriculture and process, is there any, or is the IMU one the closest category, land use category that we can get that would allow this process?
Yep, that's the latest zone.
Okay. So that now I go, you argue that this was a change in the character of the neighborhood since the last comprehensive rezoning of 2016, which was effective in 2017. Was the agricultural uses there in 2016 or in 2015?
No, back then it was residential. They were actually houses as recently as 3 years ago.
Perfect. Okay. That's helpful.
Vacant houses.
Vacant housing owned by whom?
At the time before it was demolished, it was owned by the city, which
Owned by the city.
is why it was
So the
demolished.
city owned land in this neighborhood that it knew it was going to demolish. And during the comprehensive rezoning, really didn't have an idea what the hell what was going to be used for. I'm trying to give it as much, and I'm also trying to just put this in as small as box as possible so that these folks can go do what they want to do. But if something happens to them, that the community is not stuck with a use there that all of a sudden becomes boom, hell.
One other thing that may be helpful, we're hopefully about to adopt a comprehensive master plan that has a general land use plan map associated with it. Was this still kept as residential in the general land use map?
No, we were looking at mixed use in the city for that.
Okay, so there is flexibility for the future within that palette of whichever that
corridor.
mixed use option. So hopefully that will,
This would be consistent with the city's
that is going to be
land use plan
adopted
that would be adopted.
shortly. But more importantly, because we will have a general land use plan, it won't leave it open to whatever. It will constrain it to that smaller grouping of zoning districts so that we won't have a domino effect.
Additionally,
Sorry.
I mean, whoever wrote this IMU one code did a great job because
Thank you.
I think most of the industrial overlap type uses that we would be concerned to see in a residential area or residential neighborhood require conditional use approval. So the sort of things that are by right in IMU one are pretty compatible with being in what's really a transitional area between Pennsylvania Avenue and the residential neighborhoods to the west.
I mean, I think there's enough justification under the change and even possibly the mistake argument to justify it. My concern remains the same. I think you said the Upton Community Association owns this land.
Yes, if you like.
They're going.
They're here if you'd like to hear more about how this operation.
And they're going to and they're going to partner with or sell or lease it to.
Well, they're currently partnered with Micah and a group known as Sacred Colors to actually do the work. They've been doing this for a little bit on site of where the farm is. What this site would actually allow them to do is expand that operation and do it at a much more intense rate.
I'm feeling much more comfortable that it's a community association as well that, is
It's
controlling the
actually the
property.
neighborhood CDC that's doing this.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Sir, is there anyone here who would like to speak on this agenda item?
Sit down.
Hi, Wanda Best, the Executive Director of the Upton Planning Committee. And this is a social enterprise that we felt that we needed to improve the workforce in our community. We started it with dealing with abandoned properties and vacant land. We made it beautiful because we have residents that live across from it. And I live in this community a block away. And we also manage the Main Street program. So we figured it would really fit in with our commercial and residential district. I live there. Robert Thomas lives directly across the street. We did a whole lot of a community engagement with them understanding this. We're also partnering with the land grant system, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, to make sure that we get farmers pulled into this with doing alternative crop that they could really benefit from. And soon we'll be the only organically certified farm in the country.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you very much.
Okay, this is Kelly Little, who manages the development of this property.
And I just wanted to say, the line of question that you were going down is the exact line of process how we went through as a community. We started off, can we do it under the urban agriculture? How can we do it under that zoning? We got to the point I was explaining that it just couldn't be done. So that's how we get here. But we, to agree with where you were going is how we wanted to do it. But I think the other important thing is Upton Planning owns it and Sacred Colors is the company. And there will be private investors, but Upton Planning will always be majority owner.
Okay.
Of that, even the company. So Upton Planning will own the real estate. They're not going to sell. Sacred Colors will lease and do the operations out of the real estate that Upton Planning will always own.
Thank you very much.
So,
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this agenda item? Yes.
I just so happen to be in the neighborhood and they put it on my calendar. But I'm Chad Williams, Executive Director of the State of Maryland's West North Avenue Development Authority. And I know that they're surprised to see me here, but I'm gonna keep it short. We are very supportive of this project. Wanda and her team have done an amazing work just to get it to this far here. We thank Tariq for all of the planning and his presentation. And so I think this just meets in line with the state of Maryland's comprehensive plan, even though this is a little bit outside of our footprint, but the urban agriculture was part of our comprehensive plan that all of the community have worked towards. And so I will request a favorable approval of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, deliberations? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
And the motion to approve is as amended by the planning department to IMU 1.
Correct.
Including the finding facts that were established by Mr. Bolden in terms of the change in the character of the neighbor, right?
You didn't hear me when I said all that?
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Warren, Madam Secretary, will you call roll?
Yes. Commissioner Allen.
Approve.
Commissioner Curtis.
Approve.
Commissioner Horn.
Approve.
Commissioner Jolin.
Approve.
Commissioner McCoach.
Approve.
Commissioner Williams.
Approve.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Approve.
Mr. Chair.
Approve.
Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item, which I'm dying to hear.
The other die or in this die? We're still talking about die.
Sorry.
But in all seriousness, the next agenda item is City Council Bill 24-0599, zoning conditional use, crematorium citywide.
Good afternoon. Eric Tisa presenting for today, and with us today is Councilman Conway and staff. By way, I guess, of background to back up a little bit, you may know the little bit of background. There's one particular location that caused a lot of community concern that was the genesis of this conversation. And it started as, well, do we need to do a rezoning of that particular property to solve the problem? And the answer was no, but a more general zoning code amendment would be more appropriate. So here we are. In today's zoning code, crematoria are listed in the zoning code as an inclusion in the definition for cemetery, which you see here. So where we have definitions of uses, it explains what the use is. And then for clarification, it can have inclusions, and then it can have exclusions to clarify what we mean by what is part of a cemetery use. So as it sits in the code today, crematorium, mausoleum, funeral home, necessary sales and maintenance are all eligible to be part of a cemetery use. So this bill would strike that inclusion. Likewise, it would then create it as a new definition, as a standalone use, and would also remove it from the funeral home definition. So we're taking out of the inclusions of cemetery and funeral home, we're defining it as a standalone thing, which is all of this. And then because we're creating it as a standalone use, that means we then have to amend the use tables to add in crematorium to allow that where we can. So in essence, if you were to look at all of the zones where cemeteries and funeral homes are allowed now, it basically mirrors that with the exception of C2 where it is not an eligible use. So that square is blank. So staff wanted to look at where other properties might be affected. And I'll give a thank you shout out to Nick O'Gara on our GIS team who gets last minute unreasonable requests from me of show me all the things everywhere. And it came up with, I believe, 18 of, it's in 65, 68, I don't have my staff report printed out in front of me. Something on the order of 65 to 68 total properties that are funeral homes. 18 of them are in C2. So it's attached to the staff report, but I want to put it up here in case anybody had any questions. So those C2 locations that are currently funeral homes would not be eligible to have crematoria added to them should this bill be adopted. So we just wanted to add that for whatever reference purpose it may be valuable. So,
sorry, this fan's. So you're saying the C2 that you're listing here, the third one down, would not be able to have a crematorium.
Correct. So these are all funeral homes.
But the C2s that are below, the Chapman Harris Funeral Home and the Burgee.
Nope, I missed those. Those should be highlighted. I tried to catch all the ones that that were there and I missed those.
So it's any C2.
Any C2. Yep. I just tried to highlight the ones to make them easier to
I just want to
find.
make sure that any C2 would not allow a crematorium that.
Correct.
But that they may currently be there.
If they're there, they would become non-conforming. So we obviously didn't have the time or ability to go survey all of these users to see what they have and what they don't, but I figured the question would come up, so we wanted to have something to share. So this is.
So we're going to allow a crematorium in an R8 district, but not in a commercial district.
I would want to double check. I don't have the crisscross in front of me.
Because Brooks.
Well, I imagine that one's probably non-conforming.
Yeah, I would need to double check that piece of it. Again, part of the story behind this is you look at the diversity of where funeral homes are across the city. Right? They're in a lot of different zones. And I would need to check the R8s to see if they would be allowable as a new use. All of this to say, many of them literally were homes that evolved into standalone businesses over the decades. So there's quite a diversity of where funeral homes are located today across the city, so that it's this grab bag of options. At the end of the day, creating crematoria as a separate land use is entirely doable if it is of enough concern that it needs to stand on its own. We tried to have an approach in the current zoning code to have general land uses to be as broad as possible, but we always have the possibility of splitting something out if it needs to be treated separately. And the choice of where in what district those can go is purely a policy decision. So there's not like a rezoning standards of factor finding that needs to go with that. It's purely policy.
But right now, if I am interested in opening up a crematorium, I can look at the zoning code and I can see that it's permitted in a variety of different zones, possibly including R8, C1, C2, TOD, ORI, OR1.
Open space.
Open space, thank you. Is there an open space up
On
there?
the next page.
Okay. But it's a cemetery is permitted in those. And if a cemetery is permitted, and since a crematorium is included in cemetery, I can open up my crematorium under the guise of a cemetery in any one of those zoning districts. So why am I trying to call this out separately?
And that's why we have the sponsor here to address that.
I see the esteemed member of our council, Mr. Conway, is here. But let's finish your report first, and then we can.
Yeah, that's basically it. What I can do in the background is double check, because I looked one way, but I didn't look the other way to see if R8 would allow new funeral homes. I just don't have that at top of mind.
Homes and cemeteries.
Yes, I will look for both of those.
All right. And so your recommendation for this is approval?
Yes.
All right, great. While Mr. Tiso is looking at, go ahead.
Well, I guess a question for you, another one to, we should ponder or think through is then, if it's R8, it's non-conforming funeral home. If a funeral home in R8 were able to, 1 and 2 right now, add a crematorium to their existing home, is that a change that requires public hearing approval? I don't know the answer to that. So.
You can't ask questions that you
Yeah,
don't.
so I know that bad cross examination. So I guess do you, or maybe do we as a policy know that would be the question?
So I do not see funeral home in any of our higher density R districts.
That's cemetery.
I'm looking for that one as well.
There is only allowed.
I do not see that either.
Dying to get out.
We tried when we did the comprehensive rezoning to put all cemeteries to the extent possible in the open space district. So I'm not seeing that as an eligible use. So all of those that are currently existing funeral homes or cemeteries that might be R8 or, higher density and residential would be non-conforming as they stand now.
How about in the C2?
They are an allowable use, which is why we had a BMZA case as a conditional to the board use. And so that's adding the crematoria in that particular case was deemed a change in conditional use, which is why I went to the board and had multiple hearings and wound up in court.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Tiso from the commission?
Just a comment sort of in response to, I think, your line of thinking, Mr. Chair, is I feel that the crematorium is clearly a very different use from a funeral home or a cemetery. A cemetery, which, you can argue makes sense in an open space, and a funeral home that you could make an argument that fits in a residential neighborhood, but a crematorium, which is a completely separate function, and I think should be limited to higher impact areas such as our higher commercial or industrial, et cetera. So I think that this makes a lot of sense. The previous way it was set up, lumping them together just because they're, an associated business, I think didn't make sense. And this is a good improvement.
And the recommendation, Mr. Tiso, is for crematoriums to only be allowed in the C2?
No, it's the reverse. So it would remove C2 as an eligible district. So it's like C2 through C5, some of our industrial districts where they're allowed. So it would, in essence, only remove C2 from eligibility. It ported in the location, the zones where cemeteries and funeral homes are allowed with the exception of C2.
So what zoning categories are cemeteries and funeral homes allowed?
So we have.
Other than C2? All right, so let's bring up our esteemed councilman, Mr. Conway.
Thank you, guys. And you guys got me sweating already, and I didn't even say anything.
Take the jacket off.
No one sees me without a jacket, so I appreciate you guys again. Councilman Conner, representing the 4th District, sponsored the bill. So a couple things to keep in mind. Today, funeral homes are allowed in C2, C3, C4, and cemeteries are allowed in open space. And so at this current moment, you can have crematoriums in all of those places. It is permitted by right in 3 and 4. 3 and 4, of course, as you know, is a larger plot of land, larger territory, more space away from neighborhoods. C2, though, is very much designed to be close and integrated within neighborhoods, walkable, and it's much closer to folks. And so part of the reason why I brought forward the bill is I didn't realize a couple of things. First, I didn't think that crematoriums were allowed in the city, assuming that they were incinerators, which are banned in the code. But after a lot of lawsuits and lawyers get involved, apparently crematoriums are not incinerators, even though they look exactly the same. The difference is that crematoriums, they're for burning bodies, and incinerators sometimes incorporate trash. So that is the dividing factor. So part of the consideration here is, I agree with the commissioner said earlier, I don't, there are not as many negative externalities for a funeral home. The way I sort of think of a funeral home is more like an event space. People come in, come out, you have a parking lot and so on and so forth. With a crematorium, you are burning something regularly. And I think one of the things that is different from, for instance, a stove, if someone is cooking a burger, it makes me hungry. If someone is cremating a body next to a burger joint, I don't want to eat there. So I think we want to be very thoughtful about the difference between a funeral home and a crematorium. So that's what this bill attempts to do, and this is why it pulls out C2.
So you want to create a separate category for crematoriums so that you can then remove it from the C2 district and only allow it in the C3, C4, or C5.
Precisely.
Not in open space, just C3, C4, and C5.
It is allowed in open space as well.
It is allowed in open, so I can.
Yes, I would ask that we amend that.
All right, so if I'm out there playing rack, in a nice, I'm not going to go there, it's gross, but I think it's something to consider. Okay?
And I'll tell you, if I can quickly explain how we got there, when we were kind of talking through the bill, crematoriums are automatically allowed with funeral homes and with cemeteries. Cemeteries are allowed in open space, and that's why the open space designation is where we determined it was appropriate. I appreciate the feedback, and certainly we wouldn't want to do it in a park, but it would make sense on a cemetery.
So under this scenario, though, or if this passes, crematoriums are going to be separated from funeral homes and cemeteries.
Yes.
And they would, there are currently funeral homes and cemeteries that have crematoriums on them. They're going to continue to operate them under a non-conforming use, but any new crematorium is going to have to be a standalone in the C3, C4, or C5 district.
Sure. So today there are only 4 crematoriums in the city. And I'll tell you who those are. One is Greenmount Cemetery. The other is Brown Funeral Home. That is the only one that is not on a cemetery. The third is Loudon Park Cemetery, which is the last one on that list. And then the fourth is Bayview. They have a cemetery for which they operate a crematorium. So right now, they only really exist in cemeteries where you have much more space, a much further setback. And C3 and C4 likewise require further setback, whereas C2 is very close to neighborhoods. In fact, the one proposed in my district is a mere 100 feet from someone's doorstep. So,
and if the crematorium is only allowed with the cemetery, it's not like just any general open space. It's associated with the cemetery, so I'm cool with that. Are there any questions for Councilman Conway? Go ahead, Commissioner Warren.
Just want to get the sort of the vibe of the community with this as you've been talking about it. What's their thought about this issue?
Sure. So first, the community wanted me to ban crematoriums across the city, which is not a reasonable idea. And so I tried to come at it as sensibly as possible, realizing also the need to communities and that we still need to have cremation across the city. And that it would have a pretty significant effect on funeral homes. And so when we went forward with the policy and suggested removing it from C2 and allowing it in C3, 4 in open space, folks are supportive of that. I think, most folks that I've spoken to expect that they will be cremated, including myself. And I think the balance that we're trying to find is allowing it to happen, but not making it a burden on communities while doing so.
Commissioner Joel.
Not saying that either of us are experts in this industry. I'm certainly not. So I was hoping you could walk me through.
You only get one time.
Thank you. Okay. Just walk me through a resident of Baltimore City that has a family member pass and they want to be cremated. What does that look like?
So today, almost all funeral homes, with the exception of Brown Funeral Homes, because they have a crematorium, they send the body, the corpse, to someone else, and they then pay them to do the cremation. That happens in the surrounding counties. Like I said, we only have 4 crematoriums, and one is tied to a hospital, and the others are tied to cemeteries.
Understood. So we're not limiting that because it's already happening currently.
Yeah. So the major difference here, and I won't bore you with all the details, but the industry is moving toward more cremations.
Right.
And I think, 20 years ago, only 20% of people were getting cremated. Today, somewhere between 50 and 60% of people are getting cremated. And we expect that to continue to increase. And what you're going to see is a huge rush from all of these funeral homes across the city to have crematoriums. And if every funeral home had a crematorium, I don't think anybody really thinks that's a good idea. So how do we put forward a sensible limitation on where that is, but still allow it? And so in this bill, it is allowed in C3, C4 in open space by permit. So it is like a streamlined process, but that's because they already have some of the regulations that require setbacks and otherwise.
Thank you so much, Councilman Sheffield.
Deputy Mayor Williams, any questions for the councilman?
I guess the question also in the line of not being an expert in the crematorium industry.
I know the community pushback or fear is about the emission. Do you have layperson data or know where it impacts? My thinking would be that it goes up in a way that's not even close by. It's like the people who are impacted, if at all, would be not next door, but be further away. So I guess, do you know if that's right, or do you have a sense of what that or not?
Sure. So I don't have the ability as a councilman to regulate emissions. That's not technically a way that we can look at this. But I will say emissions are a major concern, and it's one that the community brings up consistently. And I think there are significant disagreements between communities and the current regulations, because we see that Baltimore has some of the highest asthma rates. And why is Baltimore going to have to bear the burden of incinerating batteries? So I think we want to find that balance. But that is a consideration, but not primarily the argument for which we're using to make the change.
The background solid stationary air pollution.
Vice Chair Stevenson.
Yeah, just thanks for your leadership on this. I think it's a good solution.
Thank you.
Commissioner Curtis.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
Sorry, could you repeat what you just said? Baltimore has one of the highest rates of what?
Asthma in the country.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. No questions. Thank you.
All right, so I guess my only comment or question to you is, I'm a cemetery, I'm in an open space, I don't have a crematorium, but under this new provision, I can open up a crematorium.
You already can.
As part of my cemetery now and in the future. I'm a funeral home, I'm in a C2, I don't have a crematorium, I want to open up a crematorium because the numbers are going up, I can't. I would have to rezone my funeral home to a C3 or C4.
That is correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure that we're all recognizing that there are current owners and businesses that don't have a crematorium that, because of their current zoning, they could not do this, but they'll have to come in for a rezoning at some point.
That's correct.
Great. Thank you very much.
Or move their business, because rezoning that property on Main Street is not going to be the solution.
That's not the solution. Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with you, but I think relocating a business versus rezoning a property, that's a no-brainer for me. I'm rezoning the property. But just from a cost standpoint, but, I'm hearing what you're saying. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman Conway. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this agenda item? All right. Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Questions, comments, deliberations?
I think the other cost consideration, which maybe we don't have enough data in front of us, is like what more does it cost to outsource cremation by a funeral home? This is a data point. I don't have a sense of what that adds, but that's something to think about. I imagine that's the reason Von Green was, or whatever funeral home it was that was proposing a crematorium was proposing that, because it's more efficient doing a house. And so then that's where I'm struggling with the proposal, like on emissions like this. Is it how much of it is fear versus how much of it is actual science? And that's like, as a city, we don't regulate that. We trust EPA and the state MDE to regulate emissions and what's safe or what's not safe. And if it's not safe, then maybe you shouldn't do it at all. But if it is, then we should allow it. And it's not really impacting next door, it's impacting half a mile. So that's why I'm struggling with the zoning piece of it. C2 versus C4, doesn't matter if it's really impacting half a mile away.
So what this does at the end of the day for me is it just limits places where you can build a crematorium.
Well, right.
And ideally in a C3 or C4 district, those are typically larger format, retail related, a shopping center and so on and so forth, which ideally they're not a funeral home that's on the corner that's right next to a whole bunch of residences around it, where the potential impact of, the actual cremation may be a lot more intense than obviously if it was in a shopping center. So I think
Yeah, I mean, I think R8's that way. I guess C2 is Canton Crossing. So like that doesn't necessarily mean the C2 distinction in C3. I get what you're getting at. I guess I'm still struggling with still how much if the impact is actual, the emissions really aren't going to be next door. It's going to be further away.
right, quarter mile down the street, half a mile away.
Yeah, because otherwise, what's the basis for the city restricting it if it's not really impact? It's perception of fear of smoke, but it is burgers have smoke, and I don't want to. Yeah, but like the smell, like I don't know, I don't know, and that's something. But if it's not safe, then we shouldn't do it at all. But the state should say that.
All right, so the one thing that we're not taking into account, and I don't know whether or not it is even worthy of taking into account. I'm sure if you're opening up a crematorium, there are health-related issues with your building permit.
Yes.
Anything that you're incinerating and putting into the sky, I am sure somebody from the health department is looking at somehow, some way and saying, okay, you got to put in scrubbers, filters, this, that, and the other thing.
There's a state license
It's
requirement.
environment.
Yeah, because of a state licensing requirement.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's additional protection for your concerns.
So I guess, well, that's what I guess my sole question is then: are we regulating it, but based on perceived fears that if the EPA and the state say you get a license, you've done whatever you need to do to the best of your ability to prevent negative impacts, then are we over-regulating and causing more expense for a funeral home? Future people need to be cremated because some neighbors understandably have concerns about this one specific one, but is that going to drive policy citywide to make it possible for 15 of the funeral homes to ever expand or add that to their repertoire of services? Thank you.
No, you know.
So, all right, that's me. Sorry, I'm not playing the conversation.
I'm going to be a tree.
Any other further deliberations, discussions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stevenson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Warren. Madam Secretary, will you call roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Allen?
Approve.
Commissioner Curtis?
Approve.
Commissioner Horn?
Approve.
Commissioner Jolin?
Approve.
Commissioner McCoach?
Approve.
Commissioner Williams?
Disapprove.
Mr. Vice Chair?
First disapprove.
Mr. Chair?
Approve. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Councilman. All right, next item.
Item number 13, City Council Bill 24-0600, zoning, conditional use of a single-family dwelling unit to 3 dwelling units in the R8 zoning district. Variances, 2106 McCullough Street, 11th District.
Oh, Mr. Walker, it's good to see you.
Good afternoon again.
We know you know.
They breaking you in on all the
Glad to be back.
multifamily conversions?
Yep, these fun conversions. Hi.
All right.
There's a fewer details on this. Okay, so. Thank you. Okay, so Council Bill 24-600, single dwelling unit converted into 3 dwelling units in an R8 zoning district. So this subject property is 2106 McCullough Street in the Druid Heights neighborhood over west. Here we have the map highlighting the property. Have our aerial view.
You got undershirt? Sorry.
Look at the property from the west side and a rear shot from the east side. And again, we have the standards for conversions for conditional use. And the second page of those standards. So as I mentioned, there's fewer variances associated with this one. So they do have the required square footage for the minimum lot size, so that's not a concern. They have 2,400 square feet when 1875 are required. The sole variance that was requested was for the 2 additional parking spaces, which they requested a 100% variance for. We did note that there is some space behind the property, as shown in the photo, where it could be possible to add parking spaces, which would remove the need for the parking variance. And that is the only variance requested. Other than that, it is just the conditional use to use the property as 3 dwelling units. They do meet the minimum for 3 2-bedroom units. The minimum is 1,000. They're proposing 1,050. So again, the only variance required would be the parking. And we do recommend approval of this conditional use.
Very much. Any questions for Mr. Walker, starting with you, Mr. McCoach?
I simply have one question about in the summary. I wondered if I misunderstood. By my math, the 750 square foot requirement times 3 units would be 2,250. It's still under the 2,400 square foot.
Right.
Is there a condition that?
Yes, there is a condition. Section 15302, on a lot with 3 or more dwelling units, a fraction of the total area that is 50% of more of the required lot area factor counts as an additional permitted dwelling unit. So for the final dwelling unit, that would only be 375, and as long as they get over that, then that'll round. That'll be over 50%. So then they can get to the 3rd unit. So it's not just multiplied by 3.
Commissioner Horn.
No questions.
Commissioner Joel.
No questions.
Deputy Mayor.
No questions.
Vice Chair Stevenson.
No questions.
Commissioner Curtis.
No questions.
And Commissioner Allen.
None, thank you.
And I have no questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this agenda item? You don't have to. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak but is unwilling? No, I'm just kidding. All right, hearing none, we close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, deliberations from the audience or from the commission?
Just the thank you to the applicant. Looks like a great project. I'm familiar with the neighborhood, so needed investment.
Yes, thank you.
All right, with that, is that a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. You call roll.
Commissioner Allen.
Approve.
Commissioner Curtis.
Approve.
Commissioner Horn.
Approve.
Commissioner Jolin.
Approve.
Commissioner McCoach.
Approve.
Commissioner Williams. Mr. Vice Chair.
Approve.
Mr. Chair.
Approve. Congratulations. Thank you for your patience.
The last agenda item, number 14, concept subdivision and development plans 4911 and 4919 West Forest Park Avenue, 8th District.
Am I having deja vu, or has this issue been in front of the commission before?
Yes. This issue was before the commission. Here's what's going down. The issue was before the commission in 2022, in October of 2022. It was being brought before us as a concept. We had a public hearing. There was a lot of community engagement as part of that. We said, let's stop, let's wait, let's see if we can reach an agreement to do something with this. So we put the actual hearing on hold and tabled it. Then came back in, and over the last 2 years, we have had countless discussions, meetings, emails with a variety of different people, which I will get into at length after the staff report. Unfortunately, there has not been any resolution to it. So to bring this issue to a head, I had recommended to the property owner that he bring it back before the commission. Otherwise, we could be spending another 2 years and getting nowhere. So that's where we are. Let's let the staff go ahead, and then I'll probably do a little bit more after you guys are done, and then subject myself to questions and comments from the commission.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Antoine Heath, Land Use and Urban Design Division. The application before us, it's the major subdivision, the concept plans for the major subdivision, 4911, 4919 West Park Avenue. And my colleague Rachel Whitehart, she's also here with me to discuss the environmental portion of the project. So next slide.
What do you got, 6 curb cuts on this one?
Yes, yeah.
Excuse me.
Inside check.
Like up.
Sure. Sorry. Okay, so the request is for the concept plans for the major subdivision. The petitioners, Robert Britton and Frederick Ward and Associates. The owner of the property is Unity Lane Investments LLC, and the planning district is the Western District, and the community planner is Tariq Bolden. Okay, this is an aerial of the site. Let's see. There we go. This is an aerial of the site in context with the surrounding neighborhoods. You can see the site outlined in red just south of the Forest Park Golf Course. Here's a closer look at the site outlined in red. And you can see the West Forest Park, the neighborhood abutting the property to the south. Here's a bird's eye view of the site in which the property is located in the wooded area at the center of the site on the hillside. This is a street view of the property from West Forest Park Avenue headed north. Here's another view headed south. And here's another view of the property headed south, in which gives you a better view of the property. Okay, as was just stated, the property has a long history. If we go back to November 2016, the Planning Commission considered a minor subdivision from the applicant, but that was just to one of the lots, which was 4911 West Forest Park Avenue. For that particular proposal, it was 3 lots for 3 single-family detached homes, and staff recommended approval with conditions for that particular proposal, but the application was deferred and eventually it expired. And so the applicant came back again with another submittal in 2020, and staff submitted comments to the preliminary plans provided to the applicant. And the applicant responded to those comments in January of 2021 with final plans, but due to issues, environmental concerns, there was a holdup, and then the applicant went back to the drawing board, and then they came back to us in August 2022 with concept plans instead of preliminary plans. So for concept plans, in most cases, the preliminary plans, they're submitted for review, and the applicant will receive comments from staff. And so usually what the committee sees is the final plans. But in 2022, the applicant chose to take advantage of the concept plan option. And that's typically reserved for controversial projects, large phase projects, or unusual projects, which this would fit into the category of. And so this gives the applicant a chance to show the commission and staff their proposal and get feedback before producing more detailed drawings and saving some time and money. And so in 2022, they proposed 6, going back to 2020, they proposed 7 single-family detached. Then they came back to us with 6. And that particular plan, there were still environmental concerns, but because even though it dropped down by 1, there was still a lot of tree cutting on the site. And so the applicant, as was just stated, took the last few years to figure out what to do with the property. And now they're back before us. And the plan is it's still 6 single-family detached houses with some changes to some of the forest conservation plans, which my colleague will get into. And so this is the same, relatively the same plan you saw in 2022. Here's a look at the concept plan. You can see the houses facing West Forest Park Avenue, 6 houses, all of which with driveways, a retaining wall at the rear of the property, and you can see stormwater management facilities to the left of the site. So I'll turn it over really quick to my colleague and she'll discuss the forest conservation aspect.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Whitehart. I'm the Forest Conservation Program Manager for the city. And as Antoine intimated, there are a lot of forest impacts associated with this project. So the review of the forest stand delineation and forest conservation plan were pretty integral to our recommendation to the commission. So to start out, the original forest stand delineation for the site was submitted in 2016, along with the minor subdivision that was submitted at the time. Because this forest stand delineation is over 5 years old, an updated forest stand delineation was submitted in October of this year to more accurately reflect the current conditions of the site. But there are pretty minor changes between the two. And so what you see on screen is pretty relevant based on what was submitted this year as well. So according to the forest stand delineation, the forest consists of 1.61 acres of mature upland hardwoods. There are, as of 2024, 50 specimen trees, which is a tree that's measuring a 20-inch diameter or greater, so larger trees on site. The forest is described as having good composition and generally good health. And because of this good condition quality, and because of the occurrence of steep slopes across the majority of the site, this forest was classified as a priority forest for retention. So I would like to caveat this a little bit by saying that the forest stand delineation that was submitted in October of this year shows a few changes from the 2016 forest stand delineation, but we have reason to believe that it may not be entirely accurate. And so the analysis that I'll provide today is based on the plans that were submitted, but there are a few discrepancies like mislabeling of trees or other things like that draw into question the accuracy of the updated FSD. So we're sort of working off of both of them, but that's sort of a caveat to all this. Okay, so along with the 2016 forest stand delineation that was submitted with the minor subdivision, a 2016 forest conservation plan was also submitted. So this reflects the design that Antoine was referring to with the 3 dwelling units and an area for future development to the west of the site. So for this plan, they proposed 0.9 acres of forest clearing for the 3 home sites and the development plan, and the development site. And because of this amount of forest clearing, it was kept at a break-even point, which essentially means that the retained forest was sufficient to avoid reforestation requirements for the site. So no new forest needed to be planted, but there were specimen tree removals, and in Baltimore City, we have a separate mitigation requirement for specimen tree removals. And so those mitigation requirements sparked on-site and off-site planting. So at the time, there were 5 additional properties throughout the neighborhood that were available for off-site planting, and 59 trees were planted on those off-site locations, 26 trees were planted on the development site itself. And because of those combined on and off-site plantings, all of the specimen tree mitigation requirements were met for the site. So because of all these circumstances, at the time, staff recommended approval with condition of this subdivision plan, with the condition being that no forest clearing would occur on the site prior to building permit approval. So jumping ahead to today, so in October of this year, when the updated forest stand delineation was submitted, an updated forest conservation plan was also submitted. So this reflects and matches the design shown in the 2022 concept plans that were last seen by the commission in October of 2022. So as you can see, there's a significant increase in the dwelling units on site from 3 to 6, and significant grading on the western side of the site. According to these plans, the overall forest clearing is the same as what was proposed in the 2016 plan, so it's still kept at that break-even point that avoids the need for reforestation. But the specimen tree removal on site greatly increased, and the on and off-site planting greatly decreased. So in 2016, all the requirements were able to be met on site, but in this 2024 plan, 2022 concept plans, a fee in lieu is required to meet the shortfall of the planting mitigation. And that fee in lieu, according to these plans, is a total of $64,000. So, okay. And again, just to provide a little bit of a caveat with this, there are some potential issues with this design as shown. So the area, there's a very large or very tall retaining wall proposed behind the homes of 18 feet in height. And previous iterations of plans showed a larger buffer around that wall for construction, for work associated with the wall. But in this current iteration of plans, the wall or that limit has shrunk, and so it's closer to the wall than in previous iterations. And so it's likely that the forest impacts are actually greater than what's shown on these current plans and greater than what's reflected in the analysis. But we're working with the plans we have. So this is just a summary of the sort of different iterations of plans over time. So as you can see, in 2016, the plan met requirements on site, and we recommended approval with conditions. There was an interim plan that had more specimen tree removal than what we're currently seeing today. But that's largely in part due to the falling or removal by BGE of trees on site, not necessarily because of design changes. And today we have a greatly reduced off-site and on-site planting. So only 16 trees on-site compared to the 26 trees in the original 2016 plan, and only 8 trees off-site compared to 59 trees in the original plan. And that results in a fee in lieu payment of $64,000. And I believe.
So I'll speak a little bit more in terms of the equity analysis. So the development of the single-family dwelling units will likely not in themselves have a significant impact on the community, but the proposed forest clearing and lack of mitigation plannings, however, would likely have a negative short-term and long-term impacts on the area, with the clearing more than 800 caliper inches of mature trees on the location on a steep slope at that. Patterns of inequity, it's unclear if the proposal would impact the existing pattern of any existing patterns of inequity and the surrounding community of Hillsdale, according to the most recent housing market typology map, is relatively affluent compared to the rest of the city. So next slide. So engagement, the planning department and staff has met with the Hillsdale Heights community leadership multiple times over the past several years. My colleague Tariq Bolden is engaged in many of those meetings. Planning staff is worked with them to ensure that they're aware of the process, and this will have no internal effect on our operations. So notification, the Hillsdale Heights Neighborhood Association was notified of this application. Signs were posted. However, the signs that were posted did not have a date on them after we posted originally. So the applicant will need to speak for that. So due to the environmental impacts that we project would take place with the application, staff is recommending disapproval. And so that's the end of the presentation, and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Great, thank you very much. Our questions for staff, starting with Commissioner Allen.
I don't know how to frame this as a question, so I'll start as a comment and see if I can maneuver it into a question. Can you go back a slide or so, please, to equity?
Yes.
Maybe another.
This right here.
Okay, thank you. It's unclear how this proposal would impact existing patterns of inequity. The statement about, okay, maybe I need to look this way. Pardon my back. The surrounding communities, according to housing market typology, are relatively high value, affluent neighborhoods. That sticks under my craw. affluence is not the only determining factor of equity. And at least one of the letters in the record speaks to the composition of the impact, the most directly impacted neighborhood. I'm going to say most directly impacted. I don't know if I'm stating that correctly, but hopefully someone will correct me if I'm wrong. I'll just leave it there for now. Am I unclear?
Comment and a question?
Well, I guess my question is a little broader, and it may be a rhetorical question right now, because this has come up before. Equity, I'm not sure how the department measures equity when it's doing the staff reports.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons it's worded generally. When speaking about the housing typology map, we're looking at, costs of that particular area in terms of housing is in comparison to the rest of the city. And so it's pretty general. We're looking at the types of houses or the single family, multifamily, condos, costs of those properties, those types of things, to determine whether or not we feel like there's any issues that we're compounding with approving something or disapproving something.
Okay, so this may be a touchy area for staff to delve into, but I'm going to bring it up. There have been other instances, and I consider this one of them, an addition, where from my personal perspective, there are clear issues of equity, or at least appear to be, in my opinion, that are not addressed, not considered. And I don't know whether that's because they are touchy or because it's not an area that can be quantified by data from a planner's perspective. And I can appreciate that, having worked here many years ago. And I must say too, having worked here many years ago for a long time, I very much appreciate that equity is something that you all have added to the table of consideration. But if it is added, I would like to see more consideration given to the issue of equity. I think this is one aspect of equity. I don't know if I'm clear, but.
Noted.
I think, Commissioner Allen, unfortunately, how we apply the equity analysis on applications is it's very broad. And it can be very specific. I mean, there's no real strong guardrails to it. So every staff member. I mean, technically, the only time we're supposed to apply the equity analysis is on city council bills, if I'm not mistaken. So we've gone beyond that, and we were applying the equity analysis on literally every thing that comes before the commission, which is great. But there's not a lot of guardrails to it. So I think the more we can define it and put some guardrails on it for everybody, the better off we are. I think, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the staff person who's writing the report, who's analyzing this and then reviewing it with the colleagues and, going through and, brainstorming about it. It's an imperfect science.
I can appreciate that. And I guess that's partly why we're here. I would just like to offer that for future consideration. And please know, this is not, it may sound like it, so this might be contradictory. I don't consider it a criticism of you or the staff that I have mentioned this kind of thing to before, because the item that comes to my mind is a proposal at Cross Keys, where I made a comment about that. Perhaps today someone will bring it up from the community, and I say that because it was mentioned in one of the letters. They didn't use the term equity, but there was a matter that I put under that umbrella. I just,
Nope, thank you.
if it is going to be a consideration, I think there's more than affluence involved here.
Commissioner Curtis.
Yes, I have a couple questions. The first is, has a study been done to see how the storm runoff would work in that area? I know there's a hill right there. And what about the erosion in the area once the trees have been removed?
Thank you for the question. So no specific analysis has been done. So in part because these are concept plans, so the intent of the applicant was to bring these to the council or to the commission early on in the review process. So to my knowledge, that hasn't happened. I don't think any erosion sediment control or stormwater review has started for the plans.
Okay. And then my second question is, where would parking be? That's a very busy street right there. So if you have visitors coming to your home, where would they park?
Go back to site plan. So this is the site plan. So there's only the driveway parking. They're going to be proposing the garage at the front of each house. So the driveway is the only parking that'll be available to visitors.
Okay. Thank you.
Vice Chair Stevens.
Great presentation. I don't have any questions because it doesn't seem like much has changed since the last time we saw this presentation. I would just briefly like to validate Commissioner Allen's point about equity, and please don't feel singled out just because you're the one standing at the mic, because this is for us collectively. But I got what you were saying about equity being sort of used as a euphemism for income and wealth, and that's, we want to be a little bit more dynamic than that. Also the language in the report is that the equity impact is unclear. If that's how we feel, then we should work to clarify that so that can be sort of factored in. I also a lot of times hear sort of neutral language around equity, as if as long as there's not a negative impact, then that's okay. But of course, we should strive to always have a positive impact in terms of equity, not just a neutral one. And then lastly, in terms of the impact, let's consider not just the immediate neighbors, but the downstream neighbors, because as you so aptly sensed, the stormwater and runoff impacts are a huge concern here. But I will finish with saying that it was a great presentation, so thank you.
Deputy Mayor Williams.
I wasn't here the first time this came up or last time it came up, and I'm stealing sort of Claudio's thunder too. Sorry for bargaining, but I missed the specific rationale for disapproval. Was it because of the forest conservation plan issues, or just because they had a good fee in lieu?
Yeah, so it was sort of, there were a couple pieces, I guess, but all under the forest conservation umbrella. So one piece is that the impacts increased from what we originally reviewed in 2016 to the current proposal. So can I see that?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So the number of specimen trees on site that were proposed to be removed increased from 23 trees to 34 trees. So that was one piece of the impact, or one piece of the justification. And then the other piece is that the planting proposed greatly decreased. So that was in part because there were 5 neighborhood properties that were owned by the applicant that were proposed for off-site planting in the form of 59 trees. And 4 of those 5 properties were sold between 2016 and today. And so now only 8 trees of off-site planting are proposed. And the on-site planting is also decreased because of the denser development. So all of those factors combined recommend disapproval.
And I guess, or a follow-up question, I guess, is that because they're complying with the fee and the calculations kind of set in stone or set in the statute. So is there even wiggle room here? Like what do we have the authority to disapprove something that meets the requirements by fee and lieu?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in the city code, in the forest conservation code, we have sort of a sequence for reforestation and afforestation. So the first priority is to provide on-site plantings. The second option is to provide off-site plantings. Often these come in the form of right-of-way trees because those are governed by BCRP and there are mitigation requirements associated with them already. And then these would have been off-site plantings protected by a long-term protective agreement. And then the third option is mitigation banking, which we actually don't have any active mitigation banks in the city. And then the fourth option is fee and lieu. So it's the last option out of all of the different ways of meeting mitigation that we'd consider. And because there were other options available that have since been removed from the table over the course of time, that is sort of what resulted in us rejecting the fee and lieu amount that was proposed in this set of plans.
And so because, I guess the assertion is that you think they could do option 2 or 3, find some more space somewhere to plant off-site or on-site. That's why you recommend disapproval?
Yeah, and I think also compounded with potentially reducing the density of development. So reducing the number of dwelling units to reduce the impacts to specimen trees. So I think that sort of combination would lead the way to approval.
Commissioner John.
Extra clarification, because this is another not my expertise. For the fee and lieu, what you just said, clarification on that is the last option available, as in the developer doesn't have option 1, 2, or 3 available to them. So now they are allowed for option 4 versus you can pick one of the 4 options.
Yes, so it's the last option available. So we want them to work through the first 3 options before resorting to the 4th.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And in part, just to add to that, one of the reasons why it's the last is because we accept a fee, but now the planting becomes the city's problem because we still have to find places to plant trees.
And it can be argued either way, right? Because we hear this argument to say that option 4 is, you have other options. They have shown that, but now it's been years, right? And if it was my property, I could say, well, I don't have any more options. Option 4 is my only. And so it's just, this is what you're asking us to decide on. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, I think into the kind of the equity discussion sort of is malleable, but one could argue of the fees to plant trees and heat islands that need more trees than here.
Commissioner Horn.
Remind me, there are some times where you volunteer to kind of jump into.
I am neck deep in this one. I'm going to let everybody ask staff question. I have very specific questions for staff, and then I'm going to talk about the effort that went on, and then we're going to open it up to the public.
Yes, my question is the effort. The efforts that have gone on to get us to this point.
You'll hear them ad nauseum.
I just want to understand that because you said, we're saying no because things could have been done beforehand. I just want to know what those challenges, what those barriers are, and what were those decision points to get us to this point.
Yeah. So, and I think Antoine and I both maybe can speak to this a little. So this project has a very long history of staff review. So as we mentioned, there's an initial minor subdivision application in November of 2016 that we recommended approval with conditions, but the application was deferred and eventually expired. And so the sort of second iteration of design was submitted in July of 2020. And between that point in time and this current point in time, there were a number of different designs that were submitted to staff for our review and comments that were provided to the effect of the comments that I've shared today about reducing the impacts to specimen trees and increasing the mitigation plantings. And the design has changed, I think, marginally throughout that course of comment review and response. So that's, I don't know if that's sort of the question you were asking. I'm happy to elaborate on other things. And Antoine, I don't know if.
Yeah, it's pretty laid it out pretty well in terms of the history of the project.
Commissioner McCoach.
Just a quick question to confirm, in our staff package, there is a colorized plan that seems to show about a 3,000 square foot storm water management facility. And now in the plans up here, there it was, in the black and white drawing. There, to the left, that big grid thing. I believe that's what that indicates.
Yes.
But is that now no longer a part of the project?
No, that's the most, what you're looking at, if you go back to the black and white, yeah, that's the most recent plan that we have now.
Okay, so no trees can go there either?
No.
Right, okay, thanks. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to be a jerk and then I'm going to be soft. What's the current zoning?
So the zoning for this, I'm blanking on the name. I don't have my report in front of me. Let's see. Says, Eric, can you look that up for me? I don't have the number in front of me, blanking on the number.
R1.
R1?
Oh, R1, yes.
How many homes are permitted on the property right now or permitted under the zoning?
I'm not 100% sure in terms of, it's based on the ratio of area you have, but the property. Yeah. Yeah.
Two different sites.
Yeah. It's 1.9 acres. Is that what you said?
1.6 acres of forest.
1.6 acres.
No, yeah.
So let's say it's 1.6 acres.
No,
So
it is 1.9 acres.
Sorry. It's two R1 lots, so is the
Yeah.
answer two?
Yeah.
So they're not.
you got to be subdivided by square footage to get density.
Let's get this to 600 square feet.
So it's 7,300 square feet. So it's 5 units per acre.
Yeah.
6 units per acre. 43,560 divided by 7,300.
Six.
Okay. So 6 times 1.6 is 9. Okay, so there's 9 units that are permitted on site. Okay, under the R1 zoning?
Yep.
Okay. Based on the concept plan, and I know this is just a concept plan, it is not an engineered drawing per se, certainly not a subdivision plat. Is the applicant complying with all the subdivision rules and regulations?
Yes, based on the size of the lots and frontage, yes.
So they're not asking for any modification to the subdivision rules and regulations for the city of Baltimore?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Ms. Whitehart? So although I understand and appreciate the chronology or the identification of how the Forest Conservation Act works, they absolutely have an option to go for a fee in lieu. So there's nothing that's prohibiting them from doing this. In fact, if you go to the 2016 plan, thank you. If I'm not mistaken, the area that's in light green here, I would imagine that was proposed to be cleared.
So those are, thank you for asking that. Those are actually easements that are stormwater easements that were proposed for the adjacent
I
development.
know that these are.
Oh, you mean the light green? Yes. Yes.
Light green area was proposed to be cleared in 2016
Yes.
for 3 homes.
Well, 3 homes and a future development site to the west.
So 3 homes on one lot and then a future development site that had yet to be developed. Okay. Can you go to the 2022 colored plan? Yeah. So all I'm really seeing is a slight modification over here in terms of additional clearing, whether it's 3 homes or 6 homes.
So there is a difference in the clearing of specimen trees associated with the project. So the forest clearing associated with the project was the same between the 2016 and the 2022 concept plans, what's shown on screen. But because of the lower density development for the 2016 plans, more specimen trees were able to be preserved. So more specimen trees around the edges of each of the different lots were able to be preserved. And so that's in part what helped reduce the impacts. And then there also, as I said, were more off-site planting locations and on-site. So that goes.
And there's nothing stopping the applicant from coming back at some point during this process and asking for off-site mitigation should they be able to find a site, like, for example, the Forest Park Golf Course across the street. I mean, if they were able to negotiate a deal with BCRP to plant trees in Forest Park Golf Course, and, that's a viable option, or giving the $64,000 to the city to help the city plant trees and designated heat island impacts where the city might not currently have funds to do that. That's not a bad thing, right?
Not a bad thing, but as Eric already said, we collect fee in lieu from various projects throughout the city. And so we, as an office, have to sort of find ways to spend down those funds, which is a lot of administrative burden on us. And so wherever we can avoid accepting fee in lieu for projects and keep trees on site, that's our preferred option for those reasons.
And how many applications do you get annually where you have to accept a fee in lieu?
I could not give you an estimate for that.
Distinct minority.
Minority meaning 1%, minority meaning 15 or 20%, minority meaning 40%.
I don't want to peg it.
All I'm trying to get at, here's the deal, okay? I'm done being a jerk, okay? Ideally, at the end of the day, there is still a deal that can be had here between the property owner and either the city or the homeowners association. But in order for that to happen, unfortunately, at this point, after 2 years of discussion, the property owner needs something concrete to go back in and say, hey, listen, I can't just sit around for another 2 years and let this happen, okay? So they haven't asked for any modification or variance to any of the subdivision rules or regulations. They haven't done anything out of the ordinary in terms of the forest conservation. They're asking for a fee in lieu at $64,000. I am sure we have had worse fee in lieu calculations in the city. I remember, quite frankly, Mercy, and a bunch of
That
others.
was an enforcement action, to be fair.
Okay. I think at the end of the day, with all due respect, you don't like the proposal. And that's really where it's coming down to. But that's fine. If they haven't broken any rules or not asking to modify any rules, I don't think the city is in a position to say no. Okay? I think if you were to give me some concrete, no, they're asking for A, B, C, and D modifications to our subdivision rules and regulations, and I'd say, whoa, okay. Or if they're saying that, I can't give you the fee in lieu or something ridiculous like that, then I'd say, whoa, but they're not asking for anything like that. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, in October of 2022, we had a number of community folks, which are back. We had presentations from presentations from a number of residents in Hillsdale Heights. We had a presentation from a woman who, and unfortunately I don't remember her name, who lived down Forest Park Avenue, where she was experiencing flooding along West Forest Park Avenue. And we said, well, let's stop and let's figure out if we can do something about this. So we put it on hold. Immediately contacted the property owner through their representative. We had a meeting. I said, what would you be willing to sell this property for? He gave a price. To me, it was a very reasonable price. It was not, it was to the point where if he had said something ridiculous, I would have said, thank you very much, goodbye. He did. He put out a very, very reasonable price in the market. Based on the total number of units that he was proposing, not the total number of units that he could achieve here, but the total number of units that he was proposing. Okay, good. So we got a reasonable property owner who's willing to make, a deal here to preserve this forest. How do we get there? Well, let's call the Department of Public Works. I spent countless times calling the Department of Public Works, seeing if they could use their stormwater utility fee. to acquire this property and preserve it as forest conservation, not touching it, and that would go against their MS4 permit requirements for impervious surface. Or even better, if they could install a stormwater management facility here and divert a storm drain that's on the, in this particular, on the north side of West Forest Park Avenue into that stormwater management to assist the woman who lives down the street who's getting flooded. Okay, nothing. After 3 months of trying to get them to do something, there was nothing. We then went to BCRP, said, can you buy this? BCRP said, no, we don't want to buy forested land. That's not, we're trying to really minimize this. We have an inventory of this, that, and the other thing. So we tried that avenue. We then tried Baltimore Green Space. Katie Lauer from Baltimore Green Space has been phenomenal, and she's continued to work on this way beyond what I would consider to be a reasonable time for her, but she's still very, very interested in doing this. And the avenue for that would be for the homeowners associate, the community association, ideally a homeowners association, to take ownership of the property for a period of time while they work through the Baltimore Green Space criteria to ultimately dedicate it to Baltimore Green Space. And it would be in their portfolio of property conserved as a forest conservation easement. We've then gone back, Katie came up with an opportunity for funding. The whole time, occasionally, quarterly, semi-annually, the property owner would check in and say, what's going on? So we have had, I got to believe I've had 25 conversations about this over the past 2 years. And the one thing that's been consistent has been the property owner has been patient. And I think now the patience is like, okay, in order to move this along, I got to do something. And so I had recommended they come back before the Planning Commission. Come back before the Planning Commission. In my opinion, we have no legal standing to deny them their application. None whatsoever. If we do, we're subject to a lawsuit. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, it would be a clear takings case. Absolutely no doubt about it. In hopes that would create the impetus to close a deal. That's kind of otherwise, forgive me, the community association, the homeowners association, there's no impetus for them. The property remains forested. There's no, and I recognize there's apprehension from the community association to take ownership of this property. What will it do in terms of your responsibility for the property? I think Katie's more than willing to work with you in terms of that. The legalities of it, we talked about that ad nauseum. I understand that there's apprehension from the community to do that, but we can overcome that. But there's no reason for you to overcome it so long as the property's still forested and nobody's doing anything. There's no reason for DPW or BCRP to do anything with this property because, again, nothing's happening. If somebody has an approval, then that's a different story. And I think so long as the property owner remains reasonable in terms of what they're willing to take for this property, that to me is like, why aren't we getting this done? And now I'll shut up and answer any questions that you as a commission have. Then we'll open it up to the public where they can speak.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Allen.
There's no issue with the parking and traffic consideration?
No, as was identified in the staff report, DOT there's curb cuts on Forest Park Avenue. As identified in your staff report, DOT did not have a problem with the 6 curb cuts. The forest and the stormwater management that is shown it's going to have to be designed. I mean, this is a concept. If they don't meet stormwater management requirements for the amount of impervious surface, they're going to have to reduce their impervious surface. This is at the beginning of the process. This is a concept to get them to a preliminary plan. Yes.
Whose purview, conceding that it may not be ours, but whose purview is the 18-foot retaining wall?
It's nobody's purview. It's their development right. If they want to build an 18-foot 18-foot retaining wall, 18-foot high retaining wall, then that's their purview.
The building code or just a.
Yeah, they got to meet, all of the safety precautions if anybody's building a retaining wall. Any other questions from the commission for me?
Well argued, counsel.
Okay.
Well,
shoot.
I appreciate all the efforts, first of all, as well as the explanation of the process. And it seems like you explored some great ideas that I wish could have landed. What are you suggesting that we vote on this, either it's approved or it's disapproved, but in the case that it is approved, are you suggesting that the property owner would continue to negotiate some kind of sale?
I will let the property owner talk about their intent after this. I have not spoken with them in probably a month. They'll be able to identify it. An approval today would be an approval of a concept that has to be refined and brought back to the planning department for preliminary subdivision approval. It has to go to, the refined numbers in terms of forest conservation. You can ask your questions on the LOD and so on and so forth. It has to go to DOP. It's the start of a process. It's not approval. It's approval of a concept that if they meet all the rules and regulations and they bring it back here, which they would have to do for final, right? They don't have to bring it back for preliminary. They got to bring it back for final.
Right. So the purpose of the concept plans is where there's a complicated project or a contentious project, before they spend all the money on engineering, they can get a trend, a reaction from the commission of thumbs up or thumbs down and make decisions from there. So if they are approved today, they would start the regular process, bring you preliminary plans, and then once that's, they would bring us preliminary plans. They'd go in circulation, get all the agency comments per usual. We'd bring you the final plans for approval. But depending on the feedback that they get from you today, they'll have some decisions to make of, if it's a yes, they can develop the plans and continue to work on something. If it's a no, then they can decide accordingly.
Or ideally, if it's a yes, now they can go back and they can say, okay, let's get this deal done. Let's figure out how to get this deal done. Because developing the site is not going to be easy. As you said, there's an 18-foot retaining wall. And if they can sell this property at a reasonable price for a forest conservation easement, I personally would rather do that than try and build 6 homes. But I mean, you got to start somewhere. So ideally, the approval today basically says, okay, now you got to work with Katie, you got to work with BCRP, you got to work with whomever to try and get this deal done. And the clock's ticking. And now there's a clock that's ticking. That would be my hope. Other questions? Did I address your question, Talib?
You did. Thank you. Just one question in terms of the barriers for the city or whatever agencies you were talking with. Was the major concern just lack of budgetary?
No.
Budgetary.
So I mean, DPW's they have the stormwater utility fee.
So what was?
They got a stormwater utility fee. This is like the perfect candidate for stormwater utility. Forgive me, Commissioner Curtis. I'm going to go. Yeah. Forgive me. I'm going to go off on this. This is like the perfect example of what you should use the stormwater utility fee for. It's a preservation of an existing forest conservation area in a perpetual easement to reduce your impervious surface. Gee, kind of a no-brainer. Oh, and if DPW takes it, and there is an opportunity for stormwater management to eliminate or at least alleviate the flooding concerns in the area, gee, wouldn't that be cool too? Right? It's a no-brainer to me. It has been incredibly frustrating for me over this 2-year period to have the numerous conversations that I have from a private sector guy and going, why the hell isn't this happening?
Can we request a response in writing, thumbs up or thumbs down, and why?
From DPW?
Yes.
I think that's a great idea.
Because what we shouldn't be doing here is penalizing the applicant or the community for something that.
City's inertia.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the conversations about DPW, so I can't speak to what happened or what not happened, but I guess that flags in my head the equity concern of, and I respect the community's position of have apprehension. Some of it's probably legitimate about the flooding, but I recognize people who live back up to a nice private tree area don't want to have their privacy trees taken, and that's fine. But it's like, should the city use its scarce dollars to help these 10 homeowners out versus any other of the many things we have limited capital to spend on? But that's something we should. But there should be an answer. I guess
I think if it was just that, that'd be a problem. I would have a problem with that. If you say, okay, we're going to go buy 1.6 acres for an agreed upon price, And the only people who are going to benefit it are the people who live up on that hill. That's probably not great. But if you tell me now I can use that on a stormwater management basis and a variety of other things, I'm looking at it going, okay, that's probably not a bad deal. And if I was paying X, again, my initial gut reaction was when the property owner came in and we were chatting about it, and I asked him the question, that was kind of the bellwether question. It was a very reasonable answer. It was a very reasonable answer. And I was like, okay.
Yes, Dan, I think you made a good point. I could see one could lay out a way to make 9 homes or even have duplexes and max out the site, and they did not do that to their credit to have something reasonable to just present.
Any other questions from the commission of me? Thank you all very much. Now let's open it up to the public for comment. Anybody from the public who wants to come up, speak, please just come up and tell us your name.
I don't know.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Nicole Gatewood. I am the president of Hillsdale Heights Neighborhood Association. With me to my right, I have Charlene Dukes. To my left, I have Winfield Willis. We will be presenting as a team. I'd like to have your indulgence because quite a bit of territory has been covered. And I think that the only way that I can first begin is to say that Commissioner Davis spoke about his unique relationship in this case. And so I want to say that he has sort of testified a bit. And because of his testifying, I think it's important that we give context and a perspective from the impacted community and what we've done. The first piece I want to begin with that I wrote down was there was a question about flooding on the property. And I know that some of the commissioners were not here at the previous hearing. There was a woman named Audra Lusher who Commissioner Davis has spoken about, her testimony being quite impactful. I think the best way that we can begin is by illustrating what this flooding looks like along Forest Park Avenue. This area is in close proximity to the area that is put forth for the subdivision.
It's down the hill.
It's down, okay, down the hill, literally down the hill, walking distance, skipping. So with that being said, do we have it ready to go?
It's not a rice patty
Okay. Oops, sorry, lawyers have technical issues.
Oh, it's nasty. I mean, this poor woman, it's horrific.
So we're not talking about minor flooding. We're talking about impactful, damage your home, destroy your belongings, flooding capacity. This is before we talk about taking a single tree away and making any changes to the current surfaces. This is Miss Lusher's home. Okay. All right. Are we done? Any further? Okay. So with that being said, there are a lot of equity issues at play here. It depends on how you define equity. To me, part of equity means all neighborhoods being given the opportunity by the city to be protected in an equal and meaningful way, particularly where they're on notice repeatedly of these issues. They've been put on notice by Councilman Burnett, who would like to be here today, but he has a conflict. He testified a bit last time about the efforts that were being undertaken to try to avoid having future flooding to this area. They talked about the manholes literally coming off and water shooting up 10 feet in the air. I can tell you that it is customary when it rains right now for me to put in 311 calls. I have emails and text messages between myself and other neighborhoods. We have something called the FPEC, Forest Park Action Council. It's an alliance of different neighborhoods, Dickeyville, Hillsdale Heights, Franklin Town, etc. And when these things happen, they impact all of us collectively because we are fearful that if these manhole covers pop off while someone is crossing the street because there's a bus stop there or someone is driving, they could be seriously injured. So I just want to frame that first. I want to go down next to this comment about parking and traffic because we're in that vicinity right now. These houses would add to the 3 homes that are already in the community. Those homes, one of the commissioners inquired, what do we do when there is a gathering? They either come into the adjoining communities of Dickeyville and Hillsdale Heights neighborhood, or they unlawfully have to occupy space at the golf course because there is no place for them to park. That lane, or rather that roadway, is a one-way in each direction. There is no deceleration point. So not only are we talking about parking, we're also talking about what happens when someone is slowing down to drive into their driveway or out of their driveway. And for that matter, just me trying to sometimes take a photograph to show context for 311, I take my life into my hands. I have 2 choices. I can either call a neighbor and ask them to drive with me so that I can hold the cameras while we speed by, or I can just put my hazards on, pray really hard, and hope that I go at a decent time where no one is out. I took a photograph last night. I went at 10 o'clock. I had to wait 4.5 minutes for traffic to stop just to get a break so that I could try to get a sign, a picture of the posting that we talked about a little bit earlier with our planning discussion. You know, we're very committed to being good neighbors, good partners, good civic stewards. And to that, each time we've come here, and we've been here since 2016 several times, we like to be prepared. Through something falling through the cracks, I'm not going to say that it was anything more than that. We did not receive notice of this hearing until yesterday afternoon at 3:30. Ordinarily, we are given great advance notice. The posting in the community has no date on it. So ordinarily, and it's not the requirement of the developer, but we have a pretty cordial relationship. We're not enemies. We always say we leave it in the room and we speak when we leave. Sometimes he will call me and let me know, hey, just want to let you know, put something in before the commission, you know, you're going to be seeing postings going up and so forth. This time, it just didn't happen. Could it have happened? Yes. Is he required to do it? No. But because of that, the mechanisms that we have in place for us to find out, besides having to check each day, every day, all day on the commission website, which when you go to the site that's listed in the statute, is not where the agendas are found. It's actually a different site. When the district planner was kind enough to send me the information, that's how I found the agenda for this meeting. Before that, we didn't know about it. I have not slept all night because I made it a point to make sure that respecting everyone's time, we could at least start the conversation today. I made sure that we had letters from Green Space that we're going to talk about a bit later because I want to give some context to the conversation that Chair Davis has spoke about. We all made concessions. Katie Lauder, the executive director, stayed up all morning once she got my call working on that letter because this project has impact, not just because we have worked together for over the course of a year now for the greater good collectively, but because this really matters. It matters to my community. We're engaged. We're not just taxpayers who pay our taxes and run away. We come to the meetings. Chair Davis has lots of emails and conversations and time he spent. I have the same. I am a volunteer. I'm a neighborhood association president. I also own my own law firm by day. And no matter what the call is, drop it because this matters to us. Our community matters. Working across the aisle matters. We don't want to hurt the developer, but we don't want him to hurt us either. So I want to talk about each of these things and just sort of go through. We talked about no deceleration lane. We talked about there being no parking. Well, what does that mean for our communities? that means that this influx from these 6 houses, who most of the time, everyone doesn't park in your home. You know, you have friends over, you may have gatherings, you may want to host something. Are we supposed to then have a sign-up sheet of when we can have guests and when we can't because we need to absorb all these extra cars? I want to talk about Chair Davis talking about how we got into this relationship, that we're knee-deep in this. We came here in October of last year. And at that time,
2 years ago.
well, it was October 2022. It's 2024 now. Isn't that 2 years?
Yeah, you said, I'm sorry, you said last year.
I'm sorry.
2 years.
2 years ago.
Okay.
So we came here in October 2022, 2 years ago. After we came, Commissioner Davis said on the record at that time that he would like to try to work out some kind of resolution, that he thought that he could sit down with the planning members, the planning department, and the developer and help, and I don't want to use the wrong word, but sort of get things moving, push this through. And I then stood up in the back of the room and I said, excuse me, we're the neighborhood association. We've been here for 2.5 hours. In fact, my neighbors are here right now. My family, we don't call ourselves neighbors, we're called the HHNA family because that's how we operate. That's what we always say. They're here. They've all taken off with less than 24 hours notice because this matters to them. Our other members couldn't be here, but we represent their interest. At that time, Councilman Burnett said, I also want in on this. If we're going to have a conversation where the chair is going to be working with the developers directly and the planning department, count me in too. So we basically formed this group, so to speak, that had all of these interested stakeholders. The conversations really kicked off, I would say, and forgive me if I'm wrong, Chair Davis, about August of last year. I recall your first email. I can pull it, but yes, it was about August of last year, and you indicated that you had had a conversation with the developer about trying to get a feel for what his price would be if we could try to come to some kind of resolution without development.
So I don't know exactly when it was. I know that after October of 2022, I met with the developer, I'm going to say in November of 2022, might have been early December of 2022. From a timing standpoint, the meeting in October, I think was the 13th. So let's say November, December of 2022 to understand his price. And then once I understood his price, I spent a lot of time talking to DPW, trying to get them to buy the property and so on and so forth, not engaging the community association because if the city bought it, put it under a forest conservation easement, y'all are, I mean, ideally y'all are satisfied, right? I mean, it's undeveloped. So I didn't come to the community association until the discussions with DPW had been exhausted and the discussions with BCRP had been exhausted.
Fair enough.
So it might very well have been August of, it wouldn't have been 2023.
Yes, but I just want to, for the commissioners who weren't involved, give context because we have not been involved for 2 years. We were involved from August of 2022 when you asked, is there some interest if we could find either the neighborhood association to sort of act as the recipient, the stakeholder to take ownership of this property and find an acquisition funding mechanism so that we could then remove the developer from the property, pay him out, and figure out how do we move forward. And in that process, that is how we then got involved with a woman who I also revere and think is fabulous, Katie Louder, who's the executive director of Green Space. But that didn't come online for us until, we didn't actually talk to Katie until 2024. There was a lot of back and forth trying to get us in touch. You gave us her name. And if you recall, you did some legwork and some outreach to try to connect us. But we've been working on this project collectively for less than a year. And I will say that all parties have been engaged at the table. And one of the issues was that from a funding perspective, how do we move forward in getting the money? Because we are a neighborhood association. Our dues are minimal. So
I think it was pretty clear. I was never asking the Hillsdale Heights Community Association to come up with any money to pay for this.
I just want to make it clear for the record. that we had to go through the processes. So when we're not funding
When I
it,
approached you initially, I said, you would not have to come up with any
Yes.
money.
correct.
We would find the source of income from either the state or the city or some other source to purchase the property. You would be the holder of the property going through the green space program for the 5 years. And at the end of that, it could be transferred over to green space.
You are correct.
Okay.
And the issue was that as we went through the process, would you agree that you later advised us that you were not able to find the funding sources that you originally thought might be amenable? So we all had to go back to the drawing board and begin researching alternate sources.
Yes.
And
I think
so
it's a
that
fair
was part
statement.
of the delay, because once we explored and exhausted everything with Chair Davis sort of helping to direct us and working with multiple parties, because on one side, the environmental team has to come out. They've got to look at your forest. They've got to make their assessments. They've got to then do their feasibility studies, due diligence, talk to their team and see, is this something that they can assist you with? What box does it fall into? As Commissioner Davis just mentioned, they have 2 boxes. The issue is that we don't fall into either. And so because our forest is in good condition, but it has been in this unusual state, we didn't qualify. We weren't eligible. So when there was a grant that came available that closed on November 1st, a sustainability grant that would have allowed us to basically do acquisition cost, buy out the developer, and then have a third party to take ownership, because we cannot apply for the grant. It can only be applied for by either a land trust or an agency within a municipality. So serious conversations started happening with DPW as well as with Rec and Parks, which is above our entry point. We can't lead those conversations because they don't answer our calls, but they answer yours either. Okay. So, but they talk with our electeds, but it's a slow, arduous process. So during this time, I've got Councilman Burnett, who's working on this. I've got a delegate who's trying to work on this. I have Katie Louder, who is working on this, and we have emails showing that all of these parties are engaging the city on our behalf, trying to get an answer. Can we proceed? Can we please get someone to sponsor us to file this application? We can't do anything because we are not in a position to do it. We are not a land trust, and we are not an agency of a municipality. So we are ineligible. We even called to see, could the Forest Park Golf Course perhaps sponsor us if the city wouldn't? And Ms. Louder said, unfortunately, with her expertise and understanding it, no, that wasn't an option. It had to be an agency in the city, because her land trust would not agree, because we did not fall into one of the 2 categories and we didn't have the 5 years in the program to qualify. So up until November 1st, we were on the phone, we were on emails, we were on text messages, reaching out to all of these different parties. I'm talking to Katie regularly. Have you heard anything? The grant is going to expire November 1st. Are we applying? Do we have someone to sponsor us? We're like, we're a family with no home. We just want to be adopted. Like, somebody take us in. You know, Councilman Burnett is having conversations with Director Zaid, is that how you say DPW director's name? Having conversations about the M4 grant money. We're doing that at the same time. We're also trying to wait for Rec and Parks to see if they would do it. We also went up to the mayor's office. We got as far as having the CAO's office to inquire, you know, is this something anyone can help us spearhead? We got an answer the week before the grant expired, which is too late to even put together a grant application. I got that answer like 5 to 7 days before it was tag out time. And do you know what the answer was? No. No reason. As you know, Chair Davis said, it's a budget thing. The city gets to make its priorities. But I don't want it to be that we were not doing everything we could as good stewards during this time and just playing around. The clock just ticked down on November 1st. And during that time, I still went back and talked to Councilman Burnett. And I've been texting him like crazy because I wish he were here to help me testify about what are our other options. Is there other city monies that we can explore? I've reached out to the developer and said, We're not closing the door on negotiations, but please bear with us. This is out of your control. It's out of our control. It is in municipality control. We're doing everything we can to make this happen. I also reached out to Katie. I said, can you please let Chair Davis know what we're doing? Because I wanted to make sure that there's no impropriety or feeling that we are misrepresenting as the neighborhood association, because as he says, we don't have direct skin in the game. It's our forest. We have so much skin in the game, I don't sleep. I have cases of Red Bull. That's how much skin in the game I have. This is important to us.
Let's make sure that we characterize this appropriately. I know you have skin in the game.
Okay.
Every single resident in your community has skin in the game. This is incredibly important to you. I learned that 2 years ago when you first came to speak with, present to the commission. But what I'm saying to you is, so long as it remains forest and there's no development application, there's no urgency. There's no urgency to do something on your part, on DPW's part, on BCRP's part, on anybody's part. Okay. That's not to say that you don't want to do something. I know you want to do something. We've been in emails for well over a year, I think over a year. So I understand you want to do it, but there's no urgency to it. And so I guess my question to you is there a problem with allowing this application to go forward, recognizing that this is like being invited to submit plans? It's not an approval of anything. It's like, okay, you know what you propose is reasonable. Now go through the process of submitting your plans and doing this, which gives the property owner the opportunity to say, okay, now I've got a path forward. So you're saying, I see the gentleman behind you saying, no, that's impossible.
What I would say is the last time we tabled the testimony we would have given about why we don't believe that land is buildable. And you told us that it wasn't the appropriate time. It was a concept hearing. And because the commission was not going to be taking a vote, we should suspend any further discussions. Let us go back to the drawing table, let you take the lead.
And I remember that very, very clearly.
And so we're back to that point now. We've never gone through that.
Real quickly.
Yes, sir.
The reason why you had considered it unbuildable was you thought the entire property was in a stormwater management easement. And if you pull up one of those drawings again, you very clearly see that the stormwater management easement for your community is in the light green swaths.
That's not accurate. That's not the testimony that was given. This is the gentleman, Winfield Willis, who actually was involved in designing and developing the original subdivision.
I can tell you what was approved. What was approved is those areas.
No, I brought you the approval last time and I brought it in front of you, the whole subdivision that was approved. And we agreed that when you are we 60 feet up in the air, okay, on this property going back down to Forest Park from the top of Hillsdale Road. On each side of the road, all of the storm drains are going into those swells that you see with the light green area. That's where the stormwater is going in. In between every house, 60 feet up in the air, all of that stormwater is going into the forest. And according to the Maryland laws, the forest can be a quality control thing to clean up the water, which he can attest to because we attest to it last time. The reason that we didn't put that side, on the other side, is the same thing. All the water that's going down was in the forest conservation area. We could not put this in the forest conservation area because we had to maintain the storm water swells. In that agreement that I brought in, the subdivision agreement, it showed that HHNA had the right to go on the land to maintain these dry swells. So if a tree falls down, if something happens, we can go and we can clean it out. I clean out the ducts or do at the bottom of the inlet or whatever.
Within the light green area, correct?
Yeah, but the forest, the tree can fall anywhere.
The
reason that we didn't do the forest conservation is because a tree could fall there and we have to maintain the whole thing. You can't just maintain the swell itself because a tree can fall from anywhere.
And that's fine. What I'm telling you is the stormwater management for your community is reserved for the light green areas.
No.
Okay, I'm telling you from a matter of regulatory approvals.
I know what it did. I did it. I was with KCW. I am the developer. The part of the whole thing, the water part,
This dry swell is to catch all of the storm water from the road. It has a swell there. If you have 100 year and it goes over, the trees are there to clean up the water so it won't go to Forest Park. In between the houses, any flood that goes there, the trees are there the trees are there to clean it up because it's environmental friendly. It was the first one done in the state. You don't have a stormwater pond where it's connected into the storm drain system. If you do that, you don't have to have trees cleaning up the water.
All right, so let's just agree to disagree on this, because I'm going to tell you, I believe that the applicant has development rights on his property.
Does not, because that's part of our stormwater.
Let's agree to disagree.
Disagree, okay.
All right. Let's assume that he has development rights to develop on his property. Okay? And you could say no, and I could say yes, and some lawyer's going to unfortunately have to figure that out if it goes beyond that. Okay? All right. Because otherwise, we're going to sit here and talk.
Okay, but other two things, so we can stop right there. I'll just give you two other things. The state law says, in which you agreed last time, that you're not supposed to be environmental friendly, building on a steep hill. That's the number one thing with the state. Don't do that with environmental. That's one. And then the other thing is that we're talking about a safety thing for my grandkids and everything else. How are you going to put a 16, 18-foot wall in between the lot? Now, that lot that you say, let's say it's 5,000 square feet. I come and put a 16-foot wall in the middle of it. Those people only can enjoy half of that amount because that's an artificial lot, because the back part of it, how are they going to get to the lot? So it's just a kind of fake out on the people that are going to move there. Who's going to climb up the 16-foot wall? Who's going to maintain it afterwards? Who's going to put a fence up there if my grandson runs out there and plays? It's a big safety hazard. They have a wall in between the lots. They really don't have a lot that's in according to the zoning rules. Let's say it's 10,000 square feet. I put a wall 16.5 in the middle of it. They only have 5, but they say they got 10,000 square feet. So the whole thing is just a kind of fake out, which is kind of predatory for a neighborhood. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, great.
I have nothing else to say on that.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, you got it.
I just want to make sure that you and everybody here heard me ask the planning department, the experts in terms of subdivision, whether or not the applicant has met all the rules and regulations for the subdivision of the property.
We had a subdivision approved, so.
Okay, so, sir, I'm not.
You approved that subdivision. You approved that subdivision, and in that subdivision, it says we have the right to go and maintain the stormwater management system, and all of those lots were a part of that approval. And I'm saying that's where I stand, and you guys did it. And I was here with it and through the whole process. And it took us 3 years to get that process done because we had to fight Dickeyville. So I know the process. I'm a person. I know you're an engineer for 40 years. I've been developing for 40 years, and I've been appraisal for 40 years. Okay. So I understand what you're saying. All right?
Eric,
Mr. Chair, yes, may I, so I'm concerned with the steep slopes on the site. I think that could be material to this consideration. And when I check the department's policy on site plan review, it mentions steep slopes a couple of times. So one is under the participants' focus and areas of interest for the site plan review committee, specifically mentions that the Office of Sustainability will review policies such as forest conservation, landscaping, waterway, wetlands protection, floodplains, steep slopes, and the Chesapeake Bay critical area. So I know that we heard from forest conservation. I was wondering if there's been any additional input from sustainability.
Yes, I think you've heard sustainability. My understanding is that in 2016, we approved the subdivision for 3 lots. The developer withdrew that application and submitted one for 6 lots, which we are not recommending approval for.
It also thank you. And then it also mentions in here, as part of the urban design goals for this site plan review committee, the number 1 listed actually is preserve, enhance, and connect natural features such as waterfronts, watercourses, the Baltimore waterfront promenade, and steep slopes. So while
think we're getting into a gray area between goals and regulations.
Yeah.
And we also haven't gotten there yet because this is just concept plans. So, I mean, as a mechanical,
Well, lastly, I'm sorry to cut you off, Eric, but I'll say this now because I was going to say it later. And our friends from Forest Conservation pointed this out. That concept plan is not feasible because there's no way that you could keep your forest buffer that close to the construction of an 18-foot wall.
That's absolute nonsense. Forgive me.
It's not from a square foot perspective. That is not valid. That dark green
You have
can't
no
extend
idea.
there.
You have no, I'm sorry. We're getting into detailed design review and that's not the purpose of this. That has to go through a whole series of detailed design and engineering reviews and approvals, including making sure that the LOD is correct and all that other kinds of stuff. Okay. If I'm digging a retaining wall from below, there's absolutely every opportunity for me to retain that. If I'm digging from above, you're right. This would have to be dug from below, from the low side. So yeah, there's absolutely an opportunity to retain that. It happens literally, think of the Legg Mason Tower. Okay. I mean, they built 60 feet down on the ground, 1 foot off of the promenade.
With sheeting and shoring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say one
Entirely
thing
possible.
is, as far as being a developer, I pay a lot of engineers and architects. Common sense always takes over because there's no way in the world water that's gonna go into there. How are you gonna get the water away?
Right.
So the water against the
Right.
wall.
Way.
It's always common sense. And when you have common sense, you tell the engineer what you're dealing with. So thank you for your common sense.
My only point, Mr. Chair, was that you made the assertion that we don't have any technical grounds not to approve this plan, that they haven't asked for any consideration beyond a by right subdivision. And
There's nothing
I
in
don't
the
think, I
subdivision,
don't
right?
think it's so clear.
No, there's nothing in the subdivision that says that thou shalt protect 25% grade slopes or greater. Is there?
So, just trying to,
No, I'm not asking you. I'm asking Mr. Tiso.
not in the subdivision regulations, no. But even if the subdivision plan, the lot layout was approved, now go build it. That's where we then have to do all of our technical reviews, which has not happened in full
Okay,
detail
but
yet.
technically under the law, there is nothing that says you can't build on a 25% grade.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
okay. So we just have 3 more issues and we're going to wrap it up to be respectful of everyone's time. No. Okay, so the other issue, we've already talked about the 18-foot retaining wall. There was a question about whose view it might impact. It will directly impact all of the residents who live on Hillsdale Road because it's the rear of their homes. And we have gotten into this in previous hearings, not in the concept hearing, but we would be able to have our residents testify that when they purchased their lots, they were told, and it was represented to them, that it would remain forested. And that was part of the agreement because of the stormwater management tool that Mr. Willis used. There was not ever to be building on that area, and they materially relied on that. But that's for another day, another discussion. Pardon me?
Who sold them those lots?
It was sold by Hillsdale Heights Neighborhood Corporation. At that time, they were the organization. They're now defunct.
Okay, and so
Can I step in for
Sure.
Hold on. I happen to be one of those homeowners, and I think the significance of that information is that it's consistent with the current developer and what he's saying. And that, in fact, at that time, it was exactly what he was saying, and that was represented to me. I live at 2806 Hillsdale Road. I was told that that was a storm water management, the entire forest was.
Okay.
And that, let me finish. And it was not buildable. And that it was not buildable because the swells had to be maintained. The reason why that's significant at this point is not whether I have a legal matter around that, but whether that's consistent with what the developer is saying to you today and the understanding when he came before this same body. He said it then, he's saying it now, and it was represented to those of us who bought our homes. It wasn't like they just said, oh, it's not buildable. What they said is that is a storm water management in the back. And the reason, and I understood that to be that it was to collect the water from the homes going down the side. And what I will tell you is as I developed my home and I have a pool in back, I actually had put underneath on the side of the home so that the water that comes down from the street goes back into those woods. Where my pool is in the back, when it was built, we put the tubes that went back past those swells into the forest because I believed it to be the storm water drain. So those tubes,
You don't own that.
those tubes that collect, not the tube from the pool itself, I'm saying the grading, so that we could collect the water because there is a lot of runoff that comes because we're on a hill. It comes from the street and it literally goes down into the back, into the forest.
Okay,
So
I don't know.
whether it's accurate or not, whether I'm using the right terms or not, I live there and I've lived there for 17 years. I can tell you what I see. I can tell you what I did, and I can tell you what I heard at the time that it occurred. And it is consistent with exactly what the developer is saying today.
And I appreciate that and I respect that 100%. But what you were told from what I am seeing and what I understand is wrong. Okay? Not a little bit, but it's wrong. That there was absolutely a development right for this property. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
So you
That would have been.
It was not because
Excuse me,
Casey,
sir. I'm speaking now.
well, I want to speak.
Okay,
Can I speak
no,
first?
it doesn't work that
Okay,
way.
you speak first. I'm
Okay.
the last word then. Speak.
I just want to finish the last points on my.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
No, I'll say that, but KCW, we knew we couldn't develop that part, but I'm just going to say one thing. Common sense is what you say. Where have you been that somebody's going to take a 18-foot wall and put it in the middle of the lots and say, I'm building this for anybody? Have you seen somebody do that? Knock down the hill and put an 18-foot wall in there? And who's going to maintain it? Those people will be left with that with a big problem. But who does that? It's not common sense. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yes, I just want to bring your attention to the letter from Green Space. And one other issue that comes up is that when we destabilize the forest, there is a line that Ms. Louder speaks to, and she talks about it increasing the heat impact for the surrounding communities, which I think is also a concern. Additionally, I just want to put on the record that you indicated, and I believe you have corrected that by now, Chair Davis, but I want to be absolutely clear. You stated that we had an apprehension of taking ownership. At no time has there been any mechanism for us to take ownership. And I think between my comments and your comments, they align in you agreeing that we were stuck with trying to get grant money in order to figure out how we move things forward.
No, there was apprehension in terms of the legalities of it, the liability associated with it. I remember, and I have those emails in terms of, well, if the homeowners association takes ownership of it, what's the liability associated with this?
So-
what are the tax implications associated with this? Yeah, there was apprehension.
That's not apprehension. I'm an attorney of 20 years. Ms. Dukes has been practicing even longer than that. We are here in our volunteer capacity and we live in the community, but it doesn't take away our brains the same way that any of the.
I'm not saying that apprehension is
So
a
when-
bad thing.
But that's not apprehension. That's us doing due diligence and
Okay.
research to ask
Forgive me
questions.
if I misspoke.
Well, that was a
Your-
definite
your-
misspeak.
Your due diligence.
Yes, I was doing due diligence.
Great.
And I also want to put on the record that I have a concern. You said that you believe that the planning department, perhaps they don't like this plan. I believe that you're overzealous in your advocacy about this development plan on the other side.
I'm not-
And it's coming out very clearly, and this is
I'm
being.
just frustrated. I'm just
The record
frustrated.
is going to show clearly that, because this is being recorded. Every time that we bring something up, there is a tone that changes. You can be polite as pie, and I've been working with you now for a year, and I think we have a pretty collegial relationship and a respect for one another. And it is never like this until it comes to this type of a hearing. And I just want to put that on the record. If you say that they don't like it, I think that there may be some bias in favor of you for liking it. And we have to figure that out because you have been directly involved in this, not just in this room, but outside of it. And you have testified ad nauseum here today. So we just need to make sure we balance that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? Yes, Mr. Barry.
As Mr. Barry comes up, there was another issue that was kind of glossed over, which is, was the property properly posted or not?
Yes.
We sent pictures. Belatedly, the property was posted twice. One was for an earlier hearing, which had a date and it was postponed. The sign company that was supposed to post it, we understand, did not post it other than recently, but it is there today and everybody is here. I'm not suggesting that that's adequate or not adequate, but I was assuming, I think the planning commission.
Mr. Tiso understands very specifically what I mean when I ask if the property was properly posted. So can I hear again the response to that? Yes, it was?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for having us back here, and we can clarify a few things that I think are important for the record. We're not here trying to be adversaries with the neighborhood. We have been working in good faith, which I hope Ms. Gatewood and others that we've worked with would agree to try to come to a resolution that would, because they could speak for themselves, but certainly you could interpret, they don't want one house on this property, two houses. They don't want anything on this property. So it's not, one reason we're here is to say, okay, well, does the commission agree there should be no houses? Then it becomes an equity issue as to whether you've turned it down in a way just to respond to community complaints or environmental, whatever you do, without any technical reasons. So that's one reason that we're here. We would continue to work if this was approved today. And I assume if it was approved today, I'm not going to be presumptuous, that it would be approved with a lot of these conditions that need to be addressed, whether it's the steep slopes or the size of the wall. I will point out the retaining wall it's only 18 feet at its peak. The average size of the retaining wall is 8 feet, not 18 feet along the whole back. Number one. We could find, going back 2 years, no record, the staff could find no record that I ever heard that Mr. Winfield's assertion that that whole property was supposed to be kept open space. There's nothing in the planning commission files for that. I've been back to archives. I think the staff has. I think the community has. He was the one who set it up. He was part of the corporation that built these houses on the top of the hill, which, by the way, were all woods. And there was a lot of controversy at the time whether or not those houses should be built at all because of floodplain and the woods that were taken down at the top. That's not the neighborhood's fault. If the proper easement wasn't put in, it wasn't put in. It's subdivided now into 2 lots. I think the corporation that had it lost it in foreclosure. My client bought it. There's some equity here to try to build new houses in the city, but we've been patient for 2 years because the city can't be responsive in a way that there are other benefits if the city were to buy this. We're not trying to make money on this, believe me. We're trying to take a piece of property the neighborhood feels is important. It could become more stormwater management to help the lady down the street. You saw the tapes. I mean, the tapes were a number of years ago, but I'm not denying there isn't a problem. So I would ask for some consideration to get this moving. If the commission wants to say no, well, then you have to bear the responsibility of what we can do without any approval. I mean, we have the right to build 2 houses and we got the recommendation for approval to build 3. If that's what you want, tell us that. If you want us to continue working with the neighborhood and hopefully with the mayor's office and the city council, we'll do that. We're not in a hurry, other than it's been going on for 2 years. And as the chairman said, there's no incentive for anybody to do anything as long as we're held up. And I think that's unfair and inequitable.
Are there any questions for Mr. Barry? Thank you very much, Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. I agree with all that.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, deliberations, discussions?
This is clearly a very difficult situation.
Is your mic on?
My mic is on. I'm just not speaking up because it's so difficult. Sorry, I will raise my voice. I am a little taken aback by the portion of helping a community in a situation and coming to this 2 years later with such animosity that happened in this room that I just saw. And it gives me pause to want to ever step outside my direct role to assist communities because I have knowledge of the workings of Baltimore City and my own neighborhood. That's the first thing I want to comment on. The thing that I'm struggling with the decision that we have with us today is the by right development that we have and what Mr. Berry just said. I can just build 2 houses here, see you later. But we have this other, we'd like to do this instead. Let's move this forward. Okay, like, I don't understand why there's anything else here before me, given all the other extra work that's happened in the past 2 years. And then my question to the commission is to help me understand and define that a little bit more, if there's more thoughts to be given there.
Any other questions, comments, retort to?
Well, just to respond, for me, this is primarily about the environmental impact and the stormwater and flooding issue. Last time, if I remember correctly, we explored whether or not this was part of a floodplain. It is not, if I remember correctly, by like 25 feet or something, but it's technically not. That's in light of the video that we were shown again today, and I haven't forgotten it since the first time I saw it. That seems like it just seems irresponsible in the context of, a changing environment and changing concerns around, storms and safety. And so this is a common sense thing for me the best solution, it seems like we all agree on what the best solution is, which is not to build the houses. We've got 3 parties that agree on that. So how do we move forward?
I appreciate that. My issue is, if DPW didn't want to do anything, how is Commissioner Jolin sitting here with the by right development in front of me as my decision, being like, I know better? That's my question to you.
If it was as simple as by right with no room for consideration, there would be no purpose of a hearing or commission in the first place. So we are here to interpret these regulations and make these real world decisions is why we're here.
To a point. I agree with you 100% that our role is, for people to bring applications before us. But if the applicant is meeting the law that they are governed by, then I don't think we can unilaterally say, no, I'm sorry, we want you to do something different. I think we can ask it. We can say, hey, would you consider this or would you consider that? And if the answer is no, we can't consider that because of X, Y, and Z, we really can't force them to do it.
I think the reason for the public hearing process is to allow community to bring up the specific issue that is being violated or the specific rule or regulation that is not being complied with. They haven't raised that here. And I guess to slightly push back on what's the best thing here, maybe the stormwater management facility would improve what's happening, especially given the woman's testimony. If it's factual that she's dumping her stormwater on the slope already down the hill, maybe that's part of the reason why it is worse on Forest Park Avenue, given these 20 homes were here. So, I think and speaking to what Mr. Willis raised, I guess if you have the records, obviously that would solve all this. So if you can produce.
I bought it last time.
And I'm sorry to retread old ground, but that's where I'm like, if we could, produce the actual document, then that would.
I bought it last time.
And just for the record, I did reach out to try and get a copy of that, but I was never able to get a copy of that. And I've never seen any other copy of that. Never seen any other copy of it. It's not in the public records. It's not, as I think Mr. Berry said, the planning department doesn't have a copy of it. It's not in the records of the property, on the tax rolls or anything like that. So, I am sorry that I've gotten frustrated in this hearing. I've gotten frustrated because after 2 years and a month of doing this, what really just totally ticks me off is that I think this is an absolute win-win situation for everybody, for the city, for the property owner, for the neighborhood. And it's just like, why the hell can't anybody just look at it and go, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Here, let's do this, this, and this, and it's done. That's why I'm so frustrated. You're frustrated because, you're committing your time and effort and everything like that. The property owner is frustrated. Everybody's frustrated. And I let my frustrations get the best of me. And for that, I apologize. It also tells me that I probably will never step out of my lane again. Because it's not, quite frankly, worth it.
So Sean, it was a great solution that you outlined. Thank you. Yeah, I thought, a very elegant solution that you outlined about finding the city agency to sort of come to the rescue. I don't understand why that hasn't happened. Why aren't we able to mobilize city agencies? If somebody could please answer that might provide some resolution to these folks.
I can speak to, I was aware that Rec and Parks was asked the question, so that's the part I was tangentially involved with in correspondence. And I know the director of Rec and Parks had the concern on an equity basis, why we buying this land. They have many other needs in the Rec and Parks budget to make parks and rec centers, and that was their issue. I don't know DPW's issue. It strikes me as more in DPW's lane. I don't know either way if there was an answer or not.
I mean, I think regardless, probably the best thing, I'm sorry, the public testimony is over, regrettably. The best thing to do is whatever we decide today, is to say, we want a formal response from the Department of Public Works regarding this, as opposed to Sean Davis, resident of Baltimore and happened to be the chair of the commission, or, the property owner or anybody else asking them nicely. We want a very specific answer why they will not acquire this based on the evidence that has been provided.
So, but going along with your suggestion, and, maybe there's a way that could occur, but without any sort of guarantee at this point, we know that if this were approved as a concept plan, it will have some sort of inertia. It'll have movement through the process. You basically have started the clock ticking. And either the deal's going to happen or it's not. And I don't feel, it's not my preference to light that fire, because you can't guarantee an outcome that's going to satisfy anybody. You can't. It's impossible to know. So I just wish that there was a period of time. I'm sure everybody's frustrated. But if there's a difference between another month and getting some commitments or making the wrong choice, what else?
It's been 2 years.
So, yeah, so what if it's 2 years and 1 month?
No. What I'm trying to tell you, and why I had suggested this is, it's been 2 years, and in my opinion, we're not one damn step further to a resolution of this than we were 2 years ago, after countless conversations, emails, so on and so forth, with some really great people working their butts off to get it done.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because nobody has any pressure
Right.
on the city.
So that's the, passage of this, you would say, would create that pressure to move forward. Or it's something.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, that's where I guess leaning towards, I think if we denied it, it would be a taking, given that it complies with all the provisions. So that's like, yeah, it needs to go, my mind, like as a planning commission, if no one's raised a technical issue as to why this subdivision application before us at concept plan level can't be approved. But separately, there should be the conversation. And I guess I spoke too quickly thinking about DPW's concerns. Imagine they looked at it and then maybe whatever reason decided, this is not a viable site.
Right. Or DPW's, quick answer could be, we have other priorities. Right. This isn't our priority.
Right.
But I think somebody needs to step up and say, okay, this is the councilman's priority. This is the resident's priority. This is the property owner's priority. That may not be your priority, but it's everybody else's priority.
Well, sure, but I guess then DPW would say they have,
Great, and they should
1,000 residents,
and they should evaluate every single one.
Right, and this goes back. I guess
I would even venture to say that the issue of equity is involved in this very discussion.
Well, that's the point. There are less affluent areas that need infrastructure, the sewage backups and other people's homes that need.
But there's a fee, a stormwater utility fee that is directly associated with this stuff, with the MS4 permit, with reducing impervious surface, with, potential stormwater management solutions. And it's supposed to be used for this kind of stuff. I'm not suggesting that we dip into, the sewer and water stuff or anything like that.
You're right. I mean, I don't know the answer. I would say then.
And so I guess I find myself going, so as much as a recommendation to approve this concept plan would catalyze action, so would a disapproval. Really? It's still going to get people paying attention to this and focusing on it. Maybe not in a great constructive way for the city.
It's already been
But-
disapproved twice, right? So why would?
It's not.
There's never no answer.
It was tabled.
Potential,
It was tabled.
Understood. Thank you.
No, actually, I would disagree with you only in that if it's disapproved, everybody in the city, DPW is going to go, oh, okay, great. Well, we're done. We don't have to worry about it anymore.
But then the
Oh, wait a
law
second.
department will be on them.
Yeah, but who the hell wants to file a takings claim against a city? At some point, if I do that, then the price is going to go from X to Y. Right? Now I'm going to say it's 9 homes and those homes are worth X. And now it's not, this amount of money, it's this amount of money times 10. Because now I got to make it worth it for me to sue you. And now I got the it's all.
Yeah.
And that's my point, that if this were another area of the city, this would not have dragged on for 2 years unaddressed by city agencies. It just would not be allowed to happen. And I find it sadly ironic because a one-time director of Rec and Parks lived at 2817 Hillsdale Road. Dr. Ralph Jones, may he rest in peace.
All right. So any other further comments, questions, deliberations from the commission? If not, do we have a motion?
I would just like to remind everyone that the staff's recommendation was disapproval.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm still concerned about the lack of specificity as to why they recommend disapproval if it's on a firm basis.
I would offer that the site plan review committee.
But did SPRC, did they go to SPRC?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I think it should.
Well, now it's, I guess subdivision, but it's good to a separate process, not like.
Well, again, the point of concept plans is to get a trend indication before they have to go through all that engineering. So that's why it has not had formal reviews yet.
Okay.
I think it is within our purview to cite environmental concerns, specifically erosion downstream that would result from construction on steep slopes. And while this is a concept plan and perhaps that would get detailed and hashed out later, the purpose, as was said, of the concept plan was to not spend money to go down a road that is, not preferable or viable. So I think it's reasonable for us to flag it now that this isn't a good idea.
So I think you're going down a very, very slippery slope when you say that, because the reality is what's a steep slope?
25%, 15 in the critical area.
No, but which one is it here? And wait a second, is there an actual regulation that says I can't develop on a steep slope? No, there's not. So now all of a sudden you're like, wait a sec. That's what I'm saying, is there's no regulation that says that the applicant can't do what he's doing. Right? There's nothing that says it. So if you want to say environmental, give me specific environmental that they're not upholding, and then that would be good. But that's just me. You've made a motion. If somebody seconds it and it's voted on, then.
Can you make that motion again?
Motion to disapprove in line with the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, I was about to say Mrs. Secretary. Mr.
Robin
Secretary.
Allen. Robin Allen.
Approve staff's recommendation.
Latoya Curtis.
Approve staff recommendation.
Talib Horn.
Approve. Staff's recommendation of disapproval.
Thank you.
Claudia Jolin.
Disapprove.
Doug McCoach.
Approve.
Justin Williams.
No on the motion.
Eric Stevenson.
Approve.
And Sean Davis.
I disapprove. No on the motion. So the motion passes 5-3. Thank you very much. That is the end of our hearing. Good luck Ravens tonight, and we will see everybody on December 5th.
Are we done?
Is it, the game's here?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll get going now. Oh,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm jealous.
All right.